New Jack Swing podcast with myself, Namdi, Mr. Stevie Street, and Mr. Sheldon Taylor. How you guys doing?
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, everybody. Yes. Anyway,
We are back with a very. This is going to be a tough one tonight. This is going to be a real tough one.
I thought all of them would be tough because when you are looking at trying to whittle down your top 10 favorites across different things, they are tough. But
Yeah, but if you think about, we were spoilt for groups back then. We were spoilt for male singers as well. There's a whole abundance of them back then,
yeah, that's true. Hey,
And
Colin.
they both straddle, as I'm sure Sheldon will go into a bit. They both straddle. You've got male singers who came out of a traditional soul era into the new jack era, trying to keep the head floating above water, and then you have got the new jacks, the youthful new jacks, like your Bobby Browns, who were peaking at that period. And then just after that new jack, you've got the hip hop soul era, which so it's a very interesting time for male singers, and how the look, the image, and the sound of a male singer kind of changed during that decade, really. Well, from the late 80s into the 90s. Very interesting, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are going to be some good ones today. We want to welcome some of our family, Colin Mills, Glenn Brown. It's good to see you. Alex. How you doing? Big Mike's, what's up? Good to join us.
They've got the popcorn ready. They've got the biscuits, maybe a beer, a cup of coffee.
We just got this. Yeah, it's going to be a good one. But before we start, guys, just generally, we go around, Stevie, and any music news.
Give them a little peek about the Christmas special that we was kind of discussing, because some of these guys might be interested.
Yes. So okay. So next week we're going to do our top 10 females. Then the week after, then we're going to do the new edition, our top 10 new edition catalog. And then our final one on the 14th is going to be an opportunity for you guys to join us and come on board. So we're going to post the link so that you can come on, and we'll go live with you guys. So that would be our Christmas stuff. So we're going to going to have a whole hour, 2 hours, and just get you guys on and
let them in one at a time, have a chat.
Yeah, one at a time. Yeah, we may have one or two. Yeah, so but it'll be great.
Yeah, it'd be good to speak to some of you, definitely.
Yes. Okay. See, Colin just finished listening to Total's first album, and yes, definitely was a great album. They were my favorite group. So yeah, I guess sometimes you have to go back and I think the one thing about these podcasts and actually the polls I put out is that sometimes you go back, listen to the album or the track, and think actually it was better than I thought. So in preparation for the new edition one, I've been listening to all their catalogs, and I'm like, actually, that Home Again album is better than I thought. So I've been doing a lot of that right now. So anyway, that's still time away. But before we start with our top 10 male favorite singers, any music news, anything that you guys want to talk about before we start?
Anything, Sheldon?
Well, I don't have anything.
There's a new album from. Let me find it. Sorry, guys. I've got it to hand here. Don't worry. This surprised me. Mr. Narada Michael Walden.
Oh, wow. Okay. So he's okay.
It was in HMV yesterday. He said it's recorded in Italy. And who did it say it's produced by?
It must be him.
It's arranged by the Nicolasi team. It's got Stevie Wonder on it, Carlos Santana, Cornell C.C. Carter. So I've not listened to it yet, but I thought I can't. There was just one copy in the store. And I thought if I don't get it, I'll probably never see it again. So
I just
try it. Give it a try.
Yeah, man. I was, man, Narada Michael Walden, man, is great, man. I've been listening to him, man, since I was like 11 years old. He was a drummer, singing in the background, playing drums. Speaking of music, I got one thing. I'm sorry. New Edition's residency. They got a residency coming up February and March, man, and the tickets sold out like in 24 hours, and then they did a second run, and then the tickets sold out, man, and then they did the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame about maybe 10 days ago. They were up there performing, doing a tribute to the Spinners, and Bobby was, got some really, really great reviews in terms of him singing, man. So it's great that they have a 10 show residency. So hopefully, man, it can extend out longer like Usher and Boys to Men.
Yeah,
So
I think it will. This was a test run. I can see them go extending, get more shows done. So it's good. Um,
Is there any specific rules tonight for these favorite singers?
well, you know what? It's going to be our favorite ones. Some of them could be. As I said, I'm sure. Stevie's probably more proficient than all of us when it comes to limited down to New Jack. But you know, I think I've got the majority of mine in the '90s, and I've got some old school, one or two old
Did,
school ones.
I don't know. Did David Foster ever sing, or was he just an instrumentalist? Producer?
he was in the group. David Foster was in the group, but he wasn't like a main singer, but he was in the group before he became a producer.
Right.
Okay.
What group was he in? Can you remember?
Yeah, the group was called Skylark. It did a record called
Right.
Wildflower that the OJs we made in the 70s.
Wow.
Yeah, so he was a singer first. Yeah.
So he ain't going to make your top 10 tonight, then, is he? Is he, Nandy?
Yeah, he doesn't make right top 10. We just I don't know if you guys know Usher's drummer, Aaron Spears, passed away. It seems like he was quite well known to a lot of people. But and then 50 Cent is touring the UK, and Colin says that the show was pretty good. Oh, he used the word wicked. But yes, but yeah,
Is
I
it
mean,
a
as I
John
said,
B record for anyone who's a fan of John B teaming up with Tank? It's it's a nice
okay.
R&B track. I'll tell you what, I'll defy anybody this evening because I looked at my top 10, and then there's another 10 singers here that are just as big, and I'm like, it's it's so hard. It's just so hard.
Okay. Well, we can. Hi, Nicole. Okay. Well, we can start then. So we can start and stuff. So I can't remember who went first the last time,
Let
but
Sheldon go first this time.
yeah, Sheldon, you want to go
Yeah,
first? Okay,
yeah.
who's number 10 on
I'll
your
go
list?
first. Number 10 on my list is Alexander O'Neal.
Wow.
Ah,
Number 10 is on my list. Alexander O'Neal, man,
I'm leaving now. I'm going now. That's it.
Alexander O'Neal is number 10 on my list because
ah,
he was just obviously he was a great singer, man, but he could equally do up tempos and mid tempos and ballads, man. And he was really alongside Frankie Beverly is that he's that one guy on the R&B side, man, he was really popular in the States, but he was even more popular in England. This guy sold out the Hammersmith Odeon like 6 or 7 days in a row, 6 shows in a row. That's like some Michael Jackson type stuff. Alexander O'Neal, man, you look at the first 2 albums that he did, the Alexander O'Neal album and then the Hearsay album, just great, man, great singer, very powerful. And then just being one of those he was a kind of an older guy, and he was able to kind of make that transition into that mid to late 80s going into the 90s, with some great records, man, where a lot of people really couldn't do it. So yeah.
I mean, Hearsay was probably one of the biggest albums of '87. It hit the charts, hit the R&B charts. Again, it's a great album. It's a great album, that.
And when you look at the sequencing of Hearsay, it reminds me of Babyface's album Tender Lovers, like the slow songs on the one side, the fast songs, like the old Ozzy Brothers albums or whatever. But believe it or not, the Hearsay album sold more in Europe than it did in the States. It sold like 900,000 in the States, 700,000 in the States, but it sold millions overseas, man.
Well, it was on the back
I mean, it was big in Nigeria.
It was on the back of Criticize, really. Criticize was such a huge hit that year.
Yeah,
He was on
criticize
top of the
fake.
pops, you know. It's just,
Yeah.
but you talk about him moving into the 90s, then he releases All True Man, which I think is a brilliant album again. Wasn't,
Oh, I love that. Love that
wasn't as
album.
like crossover pop as successful, but he worked with Foster McElroy on that album. You know, there's some great swing tracks on it. Really good swing tracks.
Yeah, those guys started to take over the producers' records, man, because he started to slide into, you know, his personal issues or whatever that kind of, you know, stopped Jam and Lewis from working with him.
He actually performed
Yeah.
in Manchester a few months ago. It was his farewell tour, his farewell gig. I mean, like you say, years of, I dare I say, years of substance abuse have caught up with him. But he, you know, we love Alexander O'Neal. You know,
he's got a book
Yeah.
out. He self-published his book on Amazon, All True Man. It's a pretty good book.
great,
Yeah,
great
I've actually,
Sheldon, great stuff.
yeah. In fact, you know, and I can go next, and he was actually, I've just had to put him in my number 10 as well.
I mean, you've just had to. Who did you take out?
I took out Kenny Green because
What is going on? You've just took him out just because Sheldon's picked him.
no, and it's not because Sheldon picked him. It's just because I completely. And you guys are, you know, the guys in the comments are putting names, and I'm like, oh yes, I forgot about them because I thought this was easy. I had written this down like
you just
3
got to
days
stick
ago.
to your 10 though, because those
Yeah, but
they
when I
come
think
to
of
you straight
when I
away.
think
They
of it,
must have
I,
good fond memories. You know what I mean?
I have his whole. I have Alexander's catalog. You know, I've got all his tracks. I've got his whole out every album he's put out, and so and he brings memories. You know, when I was in boarding school, listening to that album. You know, so not even Saturday Love. You know, I just So yeah, definitely have to put him in there. I've been trying to get him on the show, but yeah. So Steve, who is
Well,
your
like you
number
say,
10?
I've got a top 20, but I don't want to spoil it because I know all these names are going to come out at some point. But before that, I will mention a few names a few albums, because there was a lot of male singers around. Don't get the credit. Just to give them a mention, this guy's in my top 20 at number 17, Mickey Blue. He recorded an album for Capitol Records, which is a great album. The New Jackers know about this. And then he went, I think he lost, I don't know if he lost his deal or it came to an end, but he went kind of solo on an independent tip. He had about 4 or 5 albums after it, going into the 90s.
Wow.
And if you were in the record shops at the time, you was always buying his albums. You know, he just doesn't get the credit. And we need to get him on as an interview.
Okay.
I've got this guy, Chris Bender, who died very young.
Yeah.
Again, the New Jackers. If you haven't got this in your collection, please find this album. You know, and you will not be disappointed. It's a great little New Jack R&B album. This good little voice. Eric Gable, who made about 3 albums around at the time, strong vocal, worked. You know, had a few tracks written by Kenny Green. So, and you know, and he got a lot of production on there. Got your good friend here, Mark Nelson. Carried on into the 90s after his polka dot top shirt. This is a really good New Jack Swing album. This, if you've not heard it, for Capitol Records again, really good album. He went solo from Ready for the World. I think this is on.
Melvin Riley, yeah.
Melvin Riley, very street. He got his.
He was my 5th interview. But it just felt strange seeing him do the whole Ready for the World and then do the Trying to Go Swing. But anyway,
UK wise, probably one of the best to come out of the UK at the time. Signed to Talking Loud Records, which was strange because Talking Loud was more like a jazz funk kind of jazzy label, and he was like the only R&B act on it. Brian Powell, British guy, brilliant voice, brilliant album. If you can find this, get it. Another guy with a huge vocal, John Pagano, worked with R. Kelly. There's an R. Kelly mix on this, but there's some great stuff on this album. Who was the jazz guy?
Yeah, the first time I heard from him, he was singing on the George Howard Jazz album.
That's the one.
1990, 1990 personal album. Yeah.
Probably better known for his productions at the time, Alton Wookie Stewart. But again, this is his solo album, which he's got some great new Jack on this album. He's got a good voice as well, can sing.
Yeah, he's a little too camera shy to get on to come on an interview.
And
but
this
I mean,
guy that
I'm still
nobody
working on
talks about, but I reckon a lot of the new Jackers have all got his albums. Lorenzo was on a label called Philadelphia International.
Yeah,
He made
yeah.
a single called Real Love, really strong. All his albums are strong. After this, he signed with Luke. He was on Luke's label in Miami. And I remember getting the third Lorenzo album, and I didn't realize it was him. I thought it was another Lorenzo. I didn't match it up. So he's done 3 albums that but anyway, let's go on to who's at my number 10? Stephen Russell of Troop. Very distinctive voice. Very vocal that really sums up the new Jack Swing sound to me. If you listen to, say, That's My Attitude, which is a real bit of classic new Jack Swing, the vocal on that, it just sums up that era for me. Like I was saying before, that you had this wave of traditional soul singers that went through the 80s who were still around in the early 90s, but they were trumped by these new Jacks, and definitely Stephen Russell was one of the new Jacks who ushered in the 90s with a fresh, youthful vocal sound. So he's made my number 10. We all know about Troop's albums anyway, and I think he did make a solo album in the early 2000s, didn't he? And he's obviously still around now. He's still in the game, as they say. So he's my number 10. So back to you.
Okay.
Unless anyone's got any comments about Stephen Russell, which is a surprise.
No, I think people are just saying, yeah, good call out. But I guess it's you just don't think of him like that, because you think of Troop, because they mixed around. They all mixed around and sang. So you wouldn't he wouldn't stand out like that. But Sheldon, who makes you number 9?
My number 9, it's going to be a tie between Aaron Hall and Charlie Wilson.
Oof.
It was kind of
a tie.
It was like a tie for me, because I had to, for me, I was going to put both. We'll have only one, but it was like, okay, I had to have 2, because again, I wanted to have that also the 90s representation. But I'll say that Charlie Wilson first. Obviously, I guess we know how big he was, how big he is now, but how big he was, him coming out of the 70s and the 80s, the whole Gap Man situation, man, very extremely charismatic, vocal guy with the churchy runs, the churchy melisma, and Aaron Hall. And I know Big Mike says Charlie Wilson, New Jack era, but Charlie Wilson birthed the New Jack singers. You got to look at in terms of everybody singing those runs and all that stuff that comes straight out of the Charlie Wilson playbook, man. Even though he says Charlie Wilson patterns himself off the Sly Stone and Stevie Wonder, but Charlie Wilson, that vocal style, everybody between from 88 till about, I would say, maybe right around the mid 90s, when next thing you know, guys start imitating Donny Hathaway. Charlie Wilson's vocals is the blueprint for the New Jack singing style.
Totally. I mean, let's not forget he released an album, I think it was 92, Sprung on Me.
92. Yeah, Great Sprung on Me with the video. Yeah, he's little digger guy. Right. Yeah.
Let's not forget the track he did on Boomerang with Aaron Hall.
There you go.
Another new Jack Swing track. I mean, if you've not got his solo album from 92 on MCA, again, you need it. You need the album in your collection.
Well, there's a track with Charlie Wilson, R. Kelly, and
Quincy Jones album. It was on Quincy Jones album, Heaven's Girl.
Yeah.
Let's not forget Zap, Computer Love, who was singing on that.
Yeah, Charlie Wilson. There you go. Yeah, Charlie Wilson, man, very charismatic voice, man.
True.
Ooh, yeah. It is a story about Charlie Wilson, actually, that I don't think I can forgive R. Kelly for. Apparently, the time when Charlie was making, was it that early 2000s album, or was it? I can't remember, where he got R. Kelly to produce one of his big comeback tracks.
That was his solidified comeback as the Charlie Last Name Wilson.
Well, apparently Charlie Wilson went to see R. Kelly.
Yes.
And apparently R. Kelly made him wait. He kind of made him wait while he was
in a basketball game. He was at a basketball game because he's like, I want, because at that time, R. Kelly had really brought Ron Isley back. And he was like, man, I need you to do the same thing for me. Yep, I remember that.
And then the other bit of the story is when it actually came to making the track, they went to the studio and R. Kelly allegedly said to Charlie, just go. Just go, leave me in here tonight, come back in the morning and I'll have a track for you. And he goes, you what? I said, I'll have a track for you in the morning. And apparently he come back the next morning, there it was. The production was made. Was it Charlie Last Name Wilson? Was it that
That's
album?
it. That's the one. That's the one. Yeah.
Fair play to R. Kelly. He made a hit for him. He just had to make him wait a bit, which was a bit of a shame. But,
Okay. Well, I had to go back with this guy, my number 9, and that's and I had his catalog as well, Nat King Cole. Because he sounded so different, it just didn't sound like I and I think when I listened to forget the I've got his catalog, and when I listened to him, I wondered what it was like being a recording artist, a black recording artist back in his day, dealing with everything that was happening, not just racism, the publishing, everything, how he was able to still stay, still be successful. It's just, he's, so, yeah, I know it's new, so I say, Knack is not New Jack, right? I know it's not New Jack. Yeah, to me, as when I'm talking about favorite singers, if I'm thinking about, like, I can just listen to their stuff, he's as far back as I'm going to go, but I still remember that. So it's just his voice is just very unique and distinct.
Nat King Cole was a smooth guy. Nat King Cole started out, playing jazz piano, and he sang with a trio, and his voice kind of stood out, man. And he parlayed that into a solo situation, and him singing during that time period, man. His whole enunciation, his whole articulation, singing the songs, very smooth. He had a really smooth look, and he went through a period of time when he was going to doing concerts, and they beat him on stage in Alabama, but he was extremely popular, man. He was on, they called him the Capitol Records. They called it the house that Nat built, because Nat had a string of hit records, hit albums that people loved. And then he even recorded songs in Spanish. Even though his songs, he recorded the songs phonetically in Spanish, and it wasn't in perfect Spanish, his international audience, man, they loved him for it, man. Very smooth, very urbane guy. Yep.
Well, like I say, I did ask at the beginning, what are the rules of this tonight, guys? You know what I mean? What are the... Because... It's like I've got a list here. I've got a list here of my all-time faves.
But think about it, but stick with your all-time faves or whatever, because think about it. If we
all-time faves.
Stick with your faves.
Yeah.
If we saying
I'm looking at my all-time faves in the New Jack era. I've gone with that,
But that's cool. But that's good though.
My all-time faves, all time, is very different.
But you got to kind of mix them in.
Listen, I'm throwing in Curtis Mayfield in there. If you're throwing in Nat King Cole, then I'm going to throw. I'm going to throw Bobby Womack in there as well.
But you should.
It's the New Jack podcast, guys. You know what I mean? Come on.
Hey,
they did the Unforgettable album in the 90s.
Cole, did he make an R&B record? I don't even know. Educate me. Did he make an R&B record?
Who's your number 9?
All right, we'll move on. Christopher Williams is at number 9. How many albums has he made?
Okay.
3 or 4 albums? 3?
Yeah, about 4.
3 albums on 3 different labels.
So, yeah, obviously.
3 albums, 3 different labels.
I mean, it's
4.
so hard.
He did 4.
Oh, it's 4.
But huge voice, huge part of New Jack Swing. Obviously, we keep going back to I'm Dreaming, but on this album, you could say the Eddie F Untouchable remix of One Girl, which was a killer remix. Obviously, Promises and Promises on this album. Talk to Myself.
Talk to Myself.
And then obviously after this, he went to Uptown, recorded a great album for Uptown, then left Uptown and then recorded I would say, a semi-good album for Giant Records. There was some good tracks on there. It wasn't a whole brilliant album all the way through, but he still carried his vocal. Obviously, there's a bit of controversy surrounding Christopher Williams, but we don't need to talk about. But solid R&B singer, loved by a lot of us from that period, and was well part of the New Jack Swing era.
I can give you guys a trivia. 3 minutes before I was supposed to go live with Christopher Williams, he backed out of the interview. 3 minutes. I mean, it was counting down. I get an email from his publicist to say he's not going to be able to come on. And then I think within 2 months, he went into a coma, and he was out for about 6 months. Yes, this weekend, I think yesterday, he just got an honorary PhD at a university out in this past weekend. So he's now Dr. Christopher Williams, and he's made a comeback, physically, and he's made turn things around. So I'm still hopeful that 2024 he'll finally come on board, knowing that this isn't we're not. This is going to be a celebration. So, but he's on my list. But I'll bring him up when he comes. Number 8, Sheldon.
Well, real quick with Christopher Williams, man, shout out to him, man, because at the time he was coming out, man, they were looking at him like he was going to be the next Teddy Pendergrass. Hit the big, powerful voice, So yeah, big shout out to Christopher Williams. My number 8 is Keith Sweat. Keith Sweat is my number 8. Keith Sweat for me was dope because he was like that artist. Once again, he was only he was only a few years younger than Alexander O'Neal, so he was an older cat, but he was like old enough to be influenced by all the 70s Ozzy Brothers, the Blue Magics, and all of that. But he was young enough to embrace the new sound that was coming in. And unlike when you have like older artists and they try to do like a younger type of music, that music fit him like a glove, And even though Keith was not a traditional singer in terms of, like the Gerald Levert and Eddie Levert and all of that. But Keith Sweat had a certain vocal style that worked for him. And I don't want to just talk about the whining, but Keith's records, he always added that element of romance, and then the up-tempo records, they had a nice groove. It was just really fly, man. And he kind of brought that back. And his voice was a throwback to a guy to sing with a group called Slave named Steve Arrington. They had that whole nasal situation going on. So Steve, and then I also give Keith a lot of credit is that he really elevated the female-male duet. That kind of was missing in action. You didn't see that too much. And I love the fact that with Keith's music, he didn't jump on the bandwagon with producers. He didn't jump on the bandwagon, even though he did a lot of collaborations, but he didn't jump on the bandwagon getting the hottest producer to produce his records. And he introduced new female singers, whether there was Athena or Jackie McGee on the duet side. He could have easily said, okay, let me go get the hottest female singer to sing with. So I love the fact that he was kind of like self-contained and had his own mini situation going on, and his music was really consistent. So that's why
I have to give it up to Keith for being consistent with album after album, being a writer. And we can credit Keith Sweat for bringing Teddy Riley into R&B. I told you, Make It Last, 3 albums ever. I can listen to that. Love the album, love what Teddy did. I think that's his best. I would think it's one of his best productions. So yeah, Keith. Yeah, So that's definitely a good shout out.
I mean, Keith. When I first heard Keith Sweat, his voice at the time, I thought it was one of the best voices I'd ever heard in my life. I remember arguing with this guy in a record store who was serving records who didn't like Keith Sweat. The only record he liked from Keith Sweat was something which was that big single on the first album, Something Just Ain't Right.
I wanna.
Oh, that's
Something
my jam. Yeah.
He goes, that's the only record I can play. I said, I love that record. So, and I couldn't understand why I didn't like Keith Sweat's voice. I thought I'd make his number 50 again. It didn't make my top 10. This is what I'm saying. It's so hard. He's number 15 in my top 20. It's killed me not to put him in there.
Okay.
But as of the years have gone by and I've got older, his voice grates on me now. I'll be honest. That nasal, I don't think it's up the test. Like some of the Colin Mills is laughing away there. I understand, but it's kind of grates on you. It's that nasal voice. It's true. It's just. I watched on YouTube. There's a great live clip. He did a live album, didn't he? About 15 years ago.
Yeah, that was a really good album.
And he brings out. He's doing "Make It Last Forever" and he's singing away, and he brings Jackie McGee out.
The sweatshop
kills him stone dead. Jackie, I love. If you're watching it, I love you, by the way. But she comes out and just kills him. And I realised then, as years gone by, he's not the best singer, is it? I mean, he's got a very distinctive vocal. I got to say though, Sheldon, your top three, your three so far, solid, man. You started off. You've come out with a bang tonight, mate.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. I appreciate that. Yeah, Keith is more. He's a song stylist, and people don't realize that his original voice, he sang at a higher key before he started making records, and it was Teddy who told him to sing in the way that he was singing, and he just stayed in that zone. Because there's one of his albums that it was called Just Me. It came out like in 2000, maybe 6 or 2007, and his first song on there, he's singing in the falsetto. So. Yeah. I give it to him.
I mean, here's a little story for you. This is when I got the opportunity to interview Teddy Riley for 20 minutes, and I was being made to wait while they were doing the fans meet and greet. And I'm stood there, all these fans, they're just leaving this room. They're all going out, the door shuts. Teddy Riley sat on the couch. On the other side is Dave Hollister with a few of the newer Blackstreet members. The door opens. Keith Sweat walks in and literally just walks past me, and he's about to go on stage, and he's got a little short glass of whiskey.
Back then too, huh?
I'm not lying, guy. I don't know how he performed because he was drunk. He was drunk. That's Keith Sweat. I'm just completely starstruck. Really tall guy, but I don't know how he performed. I don't know how he did it. He did.
He does that now. You see him on stage with the Tennessee, the cognac.
Yeah, I thought it was part of the show, but I guess
his nose is. You could tell because his nose is out here when he leans forward, and he's like, "Oh, I don't know how he does it."
I thought it was part of the show. It's funny. People are putting some names like Tony Thompson and Tony Terry. I'm like, wow, there's some names out there.
I'm scared for your top 10 here, Namdi. I'm really am tonight. You've hit me hard. That Nat King Cole came out of nowhere. I mean, I know David Foster. But Nat King Cole, man. I don't think we can quite live this one down tonight, mate.
Just on the side note, when I interviewed Tony Terry, I thought he was going to be my best friend because he was just like the funnest person. Then I think he went a little too deep on the backstories about the industry. And then he just ended the interview just quick, like, oh, yeah, my phone's about to die. Hold on for a few minutes. And I never saw him again. So, but he's an amazing guy. My number 8 is Mr. Casey Haley.
Wow. We're getting there. We're getting back to normality now.
I think, as I said, that, people forget the Forever My Lady album was a New Jack Swing album. And that's what Mr. Dalvin said. They wanted to be like Guy, and they did they copied Teddy and Guy with the Forever My Lady album and did all the New Jack stuff. But it didn't take off because you can't imitate what Guy was doing. So the slow jams took off and they just went in that direction. But Casey, whatever track he's on, he just brings a level of emotion, and he just goes. He's old school with a new school, and with he's just he hasn't lost it. He's just one of the most prolific, emotional singers, and so yeah, there's no how whether it's an upbeat track or slow track. Casey was that's so he makes my number eight.
Chin.
Yeah, modern day Bobby
Yeah,
Womack.
yeah, he
I
was.
love
Yes, sir,
If You Think
Chin.
You're Lonely Now, Wait Until Tonight. That's an amazing song. Um, Life, when he did the Life with on the Life soundtrack.
Love
Um,
ballad. Yeah, OTD did that. Yeah, yeah.
I want to
yeah,
say
he,
something
yeah.
controversial. That he's nowhere near Bobby Womack, Casey. Don't get me wrong. At the time, solid singer, great R&B 90s singer, but he ain't fit. He ain't fit to wear Bobby Womack's boots.
Yeah, he is, and I
He's got his own style, though. You have to remember, he got his own style.
no,
He
no, no,
loves
no.
Bobby Moore, but he's
What,
got his own style, and I would always
well,
look at him for the
I
style.
wouldn't say that he had his own style. I'm gonna tell you, all those '90s singers, they're unique with what they're doing, but they're basically a carbon copy of who came before, because that's who they grew up listening to. But if you're 20 years old and younger and you're hearing these people sing, of course it's going to be like, wow, you're either going to be on two sides of the coin. You're going to see the singing, like when you're hearing him sing, you're going to be like, okay, he has some Bobby Womack vibes. You hit an Aaron Hall or the Stevie Wonder vibes or whatever that is. But like you said, it's nothing like the original, but he was unique in the fact that as a soul singer, because there's a lot of guys with the churchy voices and all of that, but I would give it to him is that he's probably in that New Jack era, he's probably the most soulful singer in that New Jack era. There's a few other ones we're probably going to bring up or whatever, but yeah, you got to give it to him during that time. That Forever My Lady album, just those vocals and the back and forth with him and his brother. But yeah, he really, the shift went from, obviously you're looking at Aaron Hall, late 80s going into maybe 90. Aaron Hall had that, I won't say that lock, but then KC kind of like was the first start that kind of shifted away from
And that's where you
Aaron.
think,
Yeah, I got you.
and that's where all the Cisco's and everyone else came
Yes,
after with that type
yes,
of
yes.
even Dino from H Town. That's sort of like let's take the KC route.
KC is
That's
their
more.
I mean,
blueprint. Yes, sir.
Then you go from Bobby Womack to KC, and then you start mentioning Cisco. Cisco is like a pound shop. It's like a Poundland. Poundland KC Haley, isn't it? It's just like, I might as well go now. I'm going to get us in a lot of trouble here. What I'm saying, But, I tell you what, guys,
Anyway,
if you've ever experienced heartbreak from a woman, there's a Bobby Womack record that it's a classic on the soul scene here in the UK. It's called "How Could You Break My Heart," and it's just. It will reduce the toughest man to tears. That record, someone like AC has never got close. So it never got close to that, and never will. And a lot of singers won't. You just need to listen to that record in terms of like pure soul.
I'm with you a lot. Those guys, man, those soulful guys, they lived a lot. And you can hear it in the records. And I love Bobby Womack, especially the monologue in the beginning of his records before he starts singing. Like records like He'll Be There When the Sun Goes Down. He talks about the whole touring groupie situation. A lot of good. His monologues are perfect. But yeah, I got you. Definitely
good choice, Namdi. Good choice.
Okay. What about you? Who's number 8 for you?
The problem I had with number 10, 9, and 8, I kept chopping and changing. Because, like you say, Keith Sweat, it's killed me that Keith Sweat didn't eat, but I've got a reason for that. But number 8, again, I can't really compare this guy. He had his own vocal, and I can't really compare him to anybody else. But it's Ralph Tresvant.
Okay.
I mean, we've mentioned him enough in other parts. Do I need to go on about his voice? But
No, no, no. Actually,
the
because
mainstay of New Edition, he went solo, released 2 or 3 solo albums, which have all got tracks on them. I just set
and I love the
which is
one on the
incredible.
money can't
Yeah,
buy you love. That was a beautiful track. Um, yeah,
he
he
was a
was
lady's favorite
actually,
as well. Let's have it right. He was a lady's favorite.
no, but actually think about it though, because when you, because in preparation for our new edition, I've just been going through their catalog and I'm listening to him and I'm like, his stuff is really good because a lot of remember if you listen to Carell's interview, he says everyone wanted to do Ralph, so he's stuck in that tone. Like, nah, I needed to be like Ralph because Ralph had it on stuff, and I think a lot of people kind of underestimate Ralph because we got so used to him being the lead of New Edition that we forget that actually, you know what, he was distinctive in his vocals and his style. He'd like to rap, sing. He did the New Jack, he did the ballads, and
I like
he
the New Jack tracks he did
Right.
with Kyle West. I like the When You Leave
yeah, yeah.
Body track single he released, produced by
My favorite.
Go on.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm done. Go on, Sheldon.
Okay, my favorite Ralph joint, "Who's the Mac?" That's my favorite song ever that he did. I'm gonna tell you one word if I can describe Ralph's voice, is he has a supple voice. Is that he could do the mid range, he can do kind of like the whole high tenor, mid tenor situation. But the unique thing about it is that Ralph Tresvant has a baritone voice. When you listen to him speak, he has a baritone, he has a deep voice, but he sings in a higher register, and he could just sing everything, man. He has a very supple voice that he can ride the groove
Mm,
of mid-tempo rap. Mid-tempo for me, Who's the Mac, Sensitivity, those records like that, man, his voice is custom made for that. And then he can also do records like Do What I Gotta Do, and he has a lot of emotion in his voice, very supple, man,
mm.
very versatile in his style. And even though there's the Michael Jackson comparisons, honestly, when you look at Michael Jackson's ability to sing in that percussive space, Ralph Tresvant, yeah, very. He you think about it, man. And no disrespect to the group, but think about it. If Ralph Tresvant recorded those records, every record that New Edition ever made as a group, and those records were ended up just, let's say that from 83 till 96, 97, 2004, when that last album came out, if those records were like solo Ralph records, he would be the era. You're talking about, he's the Michael Jackson,
Yeah, yeah.
you know.
I mean,
When
yeah,
you look in terms of that, no disrespect to New Edition, but if he put those records out on his own, easy. I'm talking about, yeah, you can look at Usher, but Usher, his strength is on the performance side. The records he makes is great, but think about it, man. And we're talking about singers, but just briefly, just on the side, Ralph could rap, he could
he
sing,
could
he could
dance.
dance,
Yeah,
the whole thing. But
yeah,
on the singer side, he had a voice to where it stood out,
yeah.
very smooth. Even the records that people don't really hear anymore, they just know any Heartbreak album. But records like Lost in Love and all those ones they did, I'm telling you, man, when I was at
Mhm.
the New Edition concert and I seen the older women lose their minds like they was 15 all over again. He was singing those records, man, and he still sounds the same. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, don't worry. I mean, we've got the New Edition catalog stuff, so that's going to be a really interesting stuff. But yeah, Ralph doesn't get the. I think if he had come out with Stone Cold Gentleman with his first track instead of Sensitivity, I think he would have been a bit. He would have blown up bigger. But anyway, my my number 8 is I Like Your Style, Big Bub. He I mean, he co-wrote. He was singing in the background of Prerogative.
My
He's
prerogative. Yeah, you can,
he's
when you
been
hear the bridge on My
he
Prerogative, you
was
can hear his voice.
yeah
Yes.
he's been there. In fact, he did. Yeah, he's been there for such. He's been behind the scenes. He's been there for a while. Um, I loved. I like his style. I loved the stuff he did with Today. Teddy knew how to get the best of him. If you ever heard "Do the Right Thing" with Redhead Kingpin, that's Big Bub.
Oh yeah, the
Do the
hook.
right thing.
Yes,
Big Bub to me
the
at
hook.
that point was,
Yeah,
you had Aaron Hall and you had Big Bub, and that was the voice of New Jack Swing. Um, as I said, I was not a big fan of New Formula because I felt they were going a little too mature. I just loved the but the little solo stuff, and I still said to him that his My Way album, I loved the
timeless,
Timeless. Sorry, thanks.
timeless,
Timeless.
beautiful album.
A beautiful album. Just got lost in the promotion. But Bob was, if you even in My Life album, if you hear anytime, you gotta believe, that's Bob's co-wrote that, and he's singing in the background. Bob is, yeah, he just thinks of, he just, yeah, I can't say enough about Bob. Yeah, I'm still
And
trying to get him on the show. He knows he's signaled out, but yeah, 2024, I should get Bob should be on. Yeah, Zoom. Yeah, that whole album. Bob's
Bub
just,
is
yeah,
dope.
Bob's just a,
Bub is he's dope with the remakes. If you listen to him, he did a record. There's an '80s pop record by this guy singer. His name is Christopher Cross. He made a record called "Sailing," and Big Bub remade that record, and he tore it up, man. It was a dope record. I mean, remakes between Zoom and and Sailing. He's man. Big Bub is
yeah,
dope, man.
yeah, yeah,
I always feel that when I Like Your Style dropped from that House Party soundtrack, I think it was towards the autumn of 1992, and I was waiting. Then I thought, I wonder if he signed. I wonder if we're going to get a solo album on Motown by Bubba. I was waiting for it, and I thought if that had come out, that album produced by Teddy Wright, that would have been probably the greatest New Jack Swing album of all time. And it just, we never got it. He switched later.
Yeah, he came out.
But if we'd have
Yeah,
got an album then, when Teddy was that production sound and I Like Your Style, imagine if we got a whole album of that. And it was the same time he made Tammy Lucas, Is It Good to You? Because Teddy then, he'd really refined the New Jack Swing production sound by the end of 92. It was perfection. And I believe that if we'd had a Bubba solo album, then it would have been the greatest, like, hardcore New Jack Swing album of all time. One side of New Jack Swing tracks, and the other side of it'd have been amazing. It would have been incredible.
Okay,
he had a record.
Bob is not gospel now. He's still performing by himself and trying to get Today back together, and they're doing a documentary. So, but he's still touring, doing lots of.
He did a gospel album, though.
Yeah, he did a gospel album, but he's back doing his R&B stuff. Yeah.
And he did a record, he had a record that was kind of popular, even though it wasn't really, it was a minor hit, the Telling Me Stories.
Okay.
Pretty cool record. This is like around like a 93 window, 92, 93 window. It was 92. Very good record. But yeah, man, Bob is underrated. It's just that, when you gotta have, that affiliation with Teddy, he's like Aaron, is that those guys, man, when they work with Teddy, that, all due respect, everything else that they did, but it's like something magical when those guys are together,
Yeah. I mean, that's I Like Your Style. What Tammy would tell you when I interviewed her, she said when she did her part, Bob had already done his part, so they weren't in the studio at the same time. But and Bob's a powerhouse, and he keeps writing, he does everything. Yeah. So
Big Mike. Yeah, he did a record with Raekwon. Raekwon's All I Got Is You Part 2, which was Ghostface Killer did when Mary J. Blige, All I Got Is You. And when you listen to the record he did with Raekwon from Wu-Tang Clan, he's singing like Lionel Richie melodies. I think it's like Penny Lover. He's singing the melody to Penny Lover on the Raekwon record, man. Big Bub is he's great. Yeah.
Just a side note, Tammy Lucas' interview was 4 hours and 30 minutes.
Wow.
4 hours and 30 minutes.
You deserve serious accolades for that, Namdi, for going 4 hours. Serious accolades, man.
Yeah. Yeah, Sheldon, who's your number 7?
Okay, so what I did, because when I was making my
No,
list,
sorry, Stevie,
What number are we on?
7.
Oh, 7.
number
On
7.
7.
Believe
Stevie's
it or not,
good.
believe it or not.
I'm up. I'm up. I'm up.
But go
I'm
on.
up.
No, Stevie hasn't done his.
He
Stevie
did 8.
hasn't
Yeah,
done
he
his.
He did
started,
his
though,
8
didn't he?
already.
Sheldon started, so we're starting at number 7. So Sheldon,
Yeah, so I'm
you're
number
up.
7.
Yeah, no,
I'm
I
up.
did. No, I did Big Bub, which was number 7.
You skipped me.
Yeah, you skipped him.
Okay, sorry then.
Yeah, he was trying to figure out it was going to be David Foster, Big Bub. That's what it was. He forgot. Yeah. For me, I'm gonna tell you, because I was making my list, and I was always in my mind like, okay, I have my list, but also like stay within the New Jack Swing era. So it's gonna be a tie for these two, but it shouldn't be a tie, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it anyway. Okay, and my number 7 is Albie Shue and Marvin Gaye, and the reason why I gave those guys a tie is that,
What?
well, listen, let me finish, because they both need to be in a category of their own. But I'm always thinking about, okay, yeah, I got to have some New Jack singers in there as well too. But here's the deal: the reason why I had them together, I don't want to call it a tie, but I linked them together, is that as far as singing, they had the thing that they shared, is that the multi-track vocals, when you listen to the backgrounds in the Marvin Gaye records, Marvin Gaye is doing all of the notes. All the background vocals are all him, and the background vocals are stacked. And Albie Shue had like the same situation going on, to where the multi-track vocals, and it just added a great vibe to the songs that they were singing. And it was almost like when you're hearing them, you're just trapped in this wall of sound. So it's not just the vocal going on, the background vocals are there. So I would say that in terms of their approach to recording in the studio, that aura. But then separately, I'm gonna shout out Albie Shue, because Albie Shue kind of brought out the romance. Everybody else brought in the soulful Charlie Wilson energy on the New Jack side. But when you saw what Albie Shue was doing, he's the first guy that's coming out there on the romance side of the game, with the type of songs that he was singing. And he was that one, man, in terms of that, had the sound, had the falsetto, and he kind of balanced it out, because everybody had the rough edge, and he had that tenor, which was very smooth. And of course, Marvin Gaye, you know, those classics albums he put out, back to back to back to back, 4, 5, 6 albums, classics, and just their approach to singing in the studio with the multi-track vocals. They gave you a lot of emotion, gave you a lot of romance and whatnot. So that's why I linked them together, is that what they had together, their approach to singing in the studio, Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting the way you've linked that, but for me, it's like Marvin Gaye went on a run in the 70s and probably recorded some of the greatest albums, not of just black music, but of all time. Of all time, I'd say to anybody this evening, any lovers of R&B, soul, or just music in general, if you've not gone through your Marvin Gaye period, please go in. Just all the albums are in all the stores. Go out and get that 70s run of albums, sit down, and then you'll realize it's like literally every other artist has been influenced by Marvin Gaye, including Ralph
Yes.
Tresvant.
Yes.
What's Going On album, it's Ralph Tresvant has studied that album note for note. He just has. It's just like you need, in terms of like black music in general, you need these three artists you need to go through to understand the rest of black music after it. One of them's Marvin Gaye, the other one's James Brown, and I'm going to say this guy's name, Fela Kuti. You need to check Fela Kuti as well. Once you've gone through all these three guys' back catalogue, nothing compared. It's just everything else after it. You get why everything else has come after it. Really, you understand then. And it's
I'm gonna tell you.
I went through all that in the 90s. It took me years going through it all in the 90s to understand, but now I get it. You know,
if you listen to Ralph Tresvant sing "Who's the Mac," he's got the whole. Of course, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis are producing that record with him, and you hear the Marvin vibe. I mean, you talking about Marvin Gaye's the "What's Going On" album, the "Let's Get It On" album. Then you going on from "Let's Get It On" to where now you're doing "I Want You," "Here My Dear," you know, and in a lifetime, just so many dope records, man, and the studio aspect of it. So yeah, and the great thing about it is with Marvin was a guy, he wrote songs, but he wasn't like a Prince where he's doing it himself. He was able to get ideas from other people and filter that through his whole situation. So yeah, great point, Stevie, in terms of the greatness of Marvin Gaye and the connection with Ralph Tresvant. And that's why I had to do a tie, because I also wanted to show the listeners there's a tie between the young and the old. That's why I kind of linked them two together. But
I mean, in terms of I'll Be Sure, it killed me not to put him in my top. He made number 13 on my list. But my only, and I'm playing devil's advocate, I've never seen I'll Be Sure live, actually sing live. My question to you is, or anybody watching this evening, can he sing live? I'm putting that out there. Can someone, I don't know, because I've never seen him live. Because I have seen some performances of him on TV, on YouTube, via TV things where he hits some terrible notes. I'm sorry, he hits some really bad notes, and I don't know if.
Yeah, well, Al's a friend of
That's all
the
I'm
show.
saying. Someone put me right.
I
love I'll Be Sure. I love him part of the New Jack era. But
Yeah,
could he cut it?
but I don't know. Yeah, he just performed recently at.
I'm not talking about now. I'm talking about back then during that. Because obviously we've been through a lot recently. I'm talking about back then.
Yeah, and I guess it'd be interesting. It would have been interesting for anyone who went on the Heartbreak tour with I'll Be Sure, Bobby Brown, and New Edition to see how they felt. Because Al was one of the bigs. He was second after Bobby Brown, and then Bobby blew up, and then he had to open up. But it'd be interesting
I'm basing
to see.
that on. I've only seen what did I watch? It was back then in the 90s. He appeared on Oprah Winfrey's TV show. And all right, it's a TV show. Maybe the monitor weren't right while he was singing. It wasn't good. It wasn't. It could have just been a bad day at the office. You know what I mean? But that always stuck with me. I'm like, I've just watched him perform live, and it was notes were really bad.
That was the performance I think he did with Slick Rick. I know what you're talking about. That was like 89,
it wasn't. He just thought, can this guy actually do it live? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes. Salvage One, he made the connection. Chico DeBarge, definitely for sure. Chico DeBarge definitely had the Marvin vibe on the first two albums that he had. So that's definitely smooth. Good tie-in.
Stevie, who's your number 7?
Salvage One, he talked about the tone, the Sade. You know, he had a great tone. He had a unique voice. Okay. You up, Nandi? Go ahead.
Yeah, Stevie, you're number 7.
Before we get to that, because there isn't much to talk about my number 7, barely anything, because we've already talked about it all. So I'm going to mention a few more singers that didn't make it, that don't get talked about. Here's one of them, a guy called Gerald Alston, was part of the Manhattan, went solo during the late 80s, early 90s, had a good run of albums. His voice is like silk. This guy's voice is, I think this was his attempt to make him look a bit more hip, a bit more street. Nice album. But yeah, Gerald Alston. This guy for Records, Demetrius Perry. He only made one album. But again, some great stuff on that album. This guy had an incredible voice. Chris Walker, who's still around today, recorded a couple of albums in the early 90s. Great voice, you know. Another guy who sadly passed away, signed to MCA, did a couple of albums. George Pettis. Again, this guy's voice. Worked with the guys from Surface. There's a few New Jack cuts on that, but great voice. Eugene Wilde. I think we all know about this guy. Got to Get You Home Tonight. That's his. There's some serious New Jack swing tracks on that album. This guy who had a big Teddy Riley connection, passed away, sadly. 2 albums.
Omar Chandler. Yeah.
Sadly, let's not forget this guy. It was sad the way he
Who's that?
passed away. But he worked with Keith Sweat, produced some tracks on this album. I think he worked with Jackie McGee and worked with N Touch. Another, in fact, these two are linked. David Peaston and Omar Chandler. If you can remember the Apollo, Harlem, where they were looking for new talent and they were out battling each other week out. Yeah. And they both ended up getting a deal on MCA Records at the same time, which was, I mean, what an Apollo, what a time to be alive, to go to the Apollo, to see these two battling it out and then end up getting on the same label. Amazing.
And this the great guy thing about MCA and David Peaston did a great dope record. He's known obviously the record that Teddy Riley used to remix. I forgot the name of the record. Something about two places or whatever. I forgot the name of the record that he did with Teddy. It was a remix. But the record he's known for is a ballad called "Can I," which was a remake of Eddie Kendrick's. When he did that record, people lost their minds, man. When he did that record, yes.
Well, he did a track with Teddy Riley called "Two Wrongs Don't Make a Right."
That's the one. That's the one.
Yeah.
Yes.
And on this album, he worked with R. Kelly. There's an R. Kelly. I think there's an R. Kelly track on this as well. Sting. It wasn't a good track though. I'll be honest. Someone in the comments said, "Did I remember an album by?" Gosh, that is obscure. David Black. I do remember that. It was produced. Was it the guy from Troop? Was it your friend Namdi? What's he called from Troop? Demetrius Shipp.
Dimitri. No, but he was
David Black. He got produced by one of the guys from Troop. It was either Demetrius Shipp or Stephen Russell. I need to look at the credits again. In fact,
Demetrius was with Teddy.
The Demetrius Shipp was he did the. It was with Teddy.
Yeah, it was Stephen Russell. I thought it was
Stephen Russell.
And a guy is a guy that we need to talk about. This guy Tashan. I don't know if you remember him at the time.
Oh yeah. Tashan, man, he was really big more over in England than he was in the States. The first time we heard him, he was on the Houdini album, Houdini's first album in '83. And then he was called "Yours for a Night." That was Houdini. Yeah. And then he put out an album. He remade Marvin Gaye's "I Want You" back in '92.
Yes.
Okay.
He was very conscious as well. I mean, there's a track on it called Black Man. He was like when hip hop in the early 90s went very Afrocentric, very conscious. He had that look and he kind of represented that in a soul R&B sound. But he did some new jack. He worked with Soul Convention guys on the album
after
this album. But this album's on Def Jam, solid album. Last but not least, a guy called Phil Perry was part of you might remember the Montclairs, Sheldon.
Yes.
He went solo, released about 2 or 3 albums. What a voice this guy's got, Phil Perry.
He does. He's on a smooth. He does a lot of. He's on that whole smooth jazz type situation. He does a lot of songs, features with a lot of jazz artists.
No,
Miles J. Yeah.
In fact, I've got one more. If you were into Jam and Lewis and the Flight Time production label sound, there was an album in 1990 that came out that just went straight over it was more of a UK. It was a UK artist, but this guy called Lance Ellington, produced by Steve Hodge from Flight Time Productions. Wow. You need to get this album. He's got a great.
You are the Rain Man of the music industry.
Lance Ellington, one and only solo album, but I have to mention him though. Digging deep for you guys.
Stevie is the Rain Man of the music industry, boy.
And by the way, my number 7, the reason why I didn't want to talk about because it's Big Bub. Big Bub made 7.
Okay.
So we'll go back to you and see if you can pull one out for us, Namdi.
So who goes number 6 for you, Sheldon?
Yes.
I had to remove one off my list, and I just had to add somebody else, and it was El DeBarge. Wow. The reason why I added El DeBarge is because when you look in terms of singing and melody, for me, he was like him coming out of that whole DeBarge sound. Obviously, that's coming through Bobby and L's picking that up, doing it. and he's subconsciously pulling away a lot of his style. He's pulling also from Brazilian records, Brazilian melodies and stuff like that. But L for me, as far as original singer, uh obviously without peer, but his sound, to me, he's like he's probably the last of the few original singers with not just us not just singing vocally, but melody. It's one thing a person can sing, they're very soulful, but you're talking about the melodies that he's singing, that you can play the music and you know it's the El DeBarge situation. You know it's a DeBarge situation. So I like how he sings, man. He just has the melodic way of singing to where, like, some people, they have the power, but he has the sonic situation going on, the production, the vocal arrangement, the melody, and you can hear a record and you can know it's a DeBarge record without even hearing somebody sing it, just the melodies. I'm just talking about if you can hum a melody or you can play it on the piano, you know it's the DeBarge situation. So L is my number 6. I had to remove somebody. I won't say the name, but L, smooth singer.
Maybe it falls into your top 20. Like I say, that's why I did a top 20. If you took someone, maybe it falls into your 10 that didn't make it, Sheldon.
Well, by the time we get to number 1, we can do the honorary mentions and stuff. I know it's interesting because people are talking about Chico, and in the 90s, I actually preferred Chico, but it was later on that I've actually had to appreciate L, especially because when I watch him live, he's somebody who just sings with so much emotion that it's just hard to not get touched by seeing him, listening to him sing. And his biggest regret was the fact that Motown didn't let him write his debut album, and that tore him apart. So yeah, L is awesome. My number 6, we've spoken about him already, and that's Christopher Williams. He has one of my top 5 favorite songs, "All I See." That's on my list of top 5 favorite songs ever. Is "All I See," and Christopher Williams is he's like a Ferrari with his voice. He has so much power. If you guys want to really see Christopher, just watch the Uptown Unplugged on MTV, and he's there singing "All I See" live. Oh goodness, the power, everything, every little thing you do. I'm dreaming, of course. He's just the power in his vocals. It's just on another level. I wish I could have put him higher, but yeah, that's Christopher Williams, and he knows that I'm a massive fan of his vocals. I don't know too many people I see who can sing as powerful as he is. Yeah, he did the duet with Mary. Christopher was just big fan, and
if
still
you see me laughing, try not to burst. That it's these comments that are coming in. There's one there from Colin saying he removed Luther Vandross. Oh,
who removed him?
Kill me tonight. Oh dear. Oh dear.
Stevie, who's your number
Nandy
6?
removed David Foster and put Nat King Cole in.
No, I had to. No, in fact, I'd listened to Nat yesterday, and I thought, I had to put him in there. But who's your number 6 there, Stevie?
I know I'm trying to get over Colin's comments, but stop it. But I need to just look.
Show you right, Chin. Show you right, Chin.
You see how hard it is because you've got, Namdi and Sheldon have already changed their list as we've gone live. They're all chopping.
No, I didn't. I'm not really. I kept mine. I just moved one off because it just popped into my head, But I stayed consistent with my list.
Yeah, my list is always
Number 6. In terms of like a vocal performance within a group, it probably is the best. I'd say it's up there with one of the best vocal performances of that era. Probably you could argue they didn't as a singer, we didn't hear too much of him because it was only on one album. One album got released, and then there was one unreleased album, part of a different group. But I'm going for Daryl Diesel Adams at number 6, based on his time with Basic Black, based on Special Kind of Fool, which it kills me. It kills me to this day to listen to hear that record. It hits me hard. It hits me so hard that, and obviously then he went with 911. But if we had or what's he called from ARB, who we had on as a guest about a month ago, he would argue that he's probably one of the greatest, one of the best at that time.
Well, Mucho said, I asked him who's, because he's worked with Aaron, Diesel, and Big Bob, and he says Mucho and Sprague have all said Diesel was was above them all. And actually, with Diesel, he was the sound tech for Guy, and Gene kept him close because when Aaron was acting up, he wanted to replace Aaron with Diesel. So that was already in play, but they gave him the chance with Basic Black, and yeah, I mean he's on my list. But yeah, Diesel, my biggest regret is he died 6 months before I started this stuff. He died, I think, February of 2020. And yeah, such a miss. I don't think many people got to really. He got it. I don't think he got his flowers, but that's just an amazing.
I will give a mention to VJ from NJS Forever, who did. There is footage somewhere on YouTube of an interview with him. If you can dig that one out, the audio's not great, but I think he met him in a hotel lobby, sat down and spoke to him. A little interview. So there is some footage there if you can find it somewhere on YouTube. But what a voice! What a great voice!
Yeah, he went out. Wasn't he touring with Justin Timberlake for a while?
Yeah. So Rab was the vocal coach for Justin, and so Rab and Diesel were his backup singers. Yeah. The background singers for Justin. It's just as I said, it's these are the times when you just think just a few months. COVID, I think. Sheldon, who makes you number 5?
Number 5 for me, Donny Hathaway. Donny Hathaway is my number 5 because Donny Hathaway, aside from being able to write, produce, arrange, score, self-contained, being able to do that, his singing, that whole gospel, sophisticated soul thing before Marvin, before Stevie, he was like at the front of the line before all of them. When R&B music went from like the hard soul that we hear, like from the Otis Redding, the real gritty James Brown thing. Even though James Brown was roller in the 70s, Donnie came out with it was real smooth, real sophisticated. And even though he didn't have the same commercial success as like a Stevie Wonder, he was just so talented in the fact that there's a lot of records that people associate Donny Hathaway with. They were remakes. They were records that were written and sung by other people, and he made those records his own. So, and when you look at like future singers, even Teddy Riley, kind of compares. He says Aaron Hall was the Donny Hathaway of our era. Later singers like Music Soul Child and Glenn Lewis and people like that, they are in that vein. So after people stopped imitating Aaron Hall, Donny Hathaway was almost like that next wave of singers to actually kind of imitate in that neo soul era. So yeah, he's my number 5.
Yeah, I can't say no much about him apart from the Christmas song. He and I guess because when he was out, I was he passed away before I was born, but I just never got much to hear from him apart from that his this Christmas.
Get yourself a budget Donny Hathaway greatest hits CD. Just
yes.
get.
And then speaking of, I see Joe Perry. Shout out to Joe Perry. is Charlie Wilson. Donny Hathaway was his vocal influence. So when you look at
Wow.
Charlie admits, acknowledges Donny Hathaway as one of his vocal influences. So when you see how Charlie and KC and everybody's coming, that whole DNA, you see that connection of that DNA of what Donny was doing. Donny was very eclectic with the music that he actually put out, but really for people like Stevie said, check out his greatest hits and you see how great a singer he was in terms of his delivery. And of course, I wrote a piece on him, an essay a few years back. Quincy Jones looked at him like he was next. Curtis Mayfield, he was under Curtis Mayfield. Curtis Mayfield signed him. So Quincy Jones was looking at him like this guy is it. When Quincy Jones couldn't do a soundtrack album, he went and got Donny Hathaway to do it. And on a side note, Donny Hathaway had some mental problems, and Quincy would talk about how Donny used to call him on the phone after doing shows, and he would have a suitcase with $400,000 in cash, which was a lot of money back then. He said, "Hey, I sing, but how come people don't?" He would cry on the phone. How come they don't love me like Stevie? How come they don't love me like Stevie? Because Stevie at that point was like, he was it. My favorite Donny Hathaway song, it's probably, it's kind of hard. Love, Love, Love is one of the records.
Great record. Great record.
Great record. One called man, it escapes me. Sunside Showers. There's quite a few records. Someday We'll All Be Free. The Christmas record. Just so many different. It escaped me at this point, which is a shame. But yeah, I love Donny Hathaway. I didn't really get into him too heavy until the 90s. And when I was young, when he died in 79, I couldn't understand why a lot of artists of that time period, they were upset. They were very sad that he had died. He was like your favorite singer's favorite singer in that time. So yeah.
Okay. Mine. Well, we're up to
Number 5.
we're up to number 5. Yeah, my number 5. We've mentioned him, Diesel from 911 and Basic Black.
I knew it'd be in your
we've
top 10,
spoken-
Namdi. I just had a feeling.
Yeah,
I thought
He-
if he
yeah,
gets one singer that'll make me happy, you'll put D. I know he's going to put Diesel in. He's going to put it. I don't know about the rest, but I knew he'd put Diesel in there.
Yeah, there was no. I mean, I'm disappointed that I couldn't put in Joseph Stone Street. I mean, because I can't go just off of Baby Be Mine. Although they did say that he recorded the entire Blackstreet album, but had to be re-recorded with and replaced by Dave Hollister. But I haven't been able to listen to his vocals. But anyway, Stevie, who's your number 5?
Number 5, again, another big loss at the time. It's bad for the group. The group, it's like, we all love him. Kenny Green. What a loss that was. Huge loss. Kenny Green.
Yeah. Yeah. This thing about him, the talent he had as a writer, and then being able to just to vocalize what he wrote down. When you listen to Buddy saying that he heard him that they were both in the army and they were winning the talent contest just because no one could come touch him. And I don't think Kenny Green knew how good he was. I don't think he knew how good he was. And it's hard, that New Birth album.
New Life.
He almost feels as if New Life album. It almost feels as if it's hard because Buddy said it felt as if he was writing for his dad, but it felt as if he was saying a goodbye to the group. Like, I don't think I've got long to live. So it's you listen to it and it's very airy. Since I've had the interview with Buddy, I listen to it and I think, wow, who's he singing to, his dad or himself?
Yeah, Kenny, man, is I love that New Life album better than the first one. It was when you look at Kenny singing, Kenny kind of, when I don't say they sound similar, but when I say originality, okay, even though Kidney on the first album, you hear still the remnants of the whole Aaron Hall, they got the runs and all of that, but Kenny had a jazzy style, like jazzy vocal style, the way early Anita Baker. He had a really jazzy delivery when he sang, and obviously he wrote a lot of great songs. But I loved the fact how we put a song across. It was very melodic. Obviously,
Mm.
the songs he wrote, they were very custom. I love the background arrangements and just really dope. New Life really is one of my all-time favorite albums in the 90s because when you listen to him sing, he's singing, it's about 10 to 12 songs on that album. And neither song,
Mm.
I encourage people to check out New Life because when you're listening to him sing, every song on there doesn't sound like the first. When you listen to a lot of New Jack records and stuff like that, they kind of almost sound like you look at Forever My Lady. Those records, there's a similarity to those songs. You and I,
Mm.
Come and Talk to Me. But when you listen to New Life and you listen to every song he's singing, whether it's an up tempo, seems like the first time, just
Oh, that was my favorite track from Intro.
just a lot of
Me.
great records. The one New Life is autobiographical because he's talking about his father. Then he's also tying some Black history into the record. Just he's able to do Ribbon of the Sky. So I would tell people, it's like when you listen to Mary J sing those records, she's singing in the same style that Kenny Green is singing in. So it kind of reminds me of Elder Barge when you hear a Kenny Green song, whether it's Mary J. Blige singing it. You even though you didn't know who Kenny Green was, but when you heard him later, you knew how he sang. You knew he's singing in the same vibe. The way if you listen to a record and people singing the Barge records in the same vibe, same melodic style. So yeah, shout out to Kenny Green.
Imagine
There's so many unreleased Kenny Green tracks out there. He was just, and that's what we need. They're trying
there
to
was a
put
Kenny.
together because he was just
He
recording.
was recording a solo album before he died. He was recording a song because
Yeah, they've got so many
I
tracks.
remember
out
talking
there,
to, it might have been through Facebook, but it's Howie T because he produced some tracks on his solo album, and he told me there was like, again, there's some secrets that I can't reveal, but there was an album in the can, a solo album. But I'll never forget the morning I walked into my local import record store. I walked out of there that morning with two 12-inch singles, a freshly sealed intro, Love Thing on one side, Let Me Be the One on the other, 3 mixes on each side. I think a lot of us got that 12-inch that day. I also walked out with a reissue of Gwen McRae, All This Love That I'm Giving on one side of the 12, and 90% of Me is You on the other side of the 12. What a morning that was. But yeah, Intro's first album. Come on, we doesn't from start to finish. It's one of the best 90s R&B albums of all time. That Intro album.
yeah, yeah, it was an unbelievable album. Who's your number 5, Stevie?
That was it, Kenny Green.
Okay, so you got
We're
Kenny Green.
back to Sheldon now, are we?
Sheldon, yes, number 4.
4 for me, Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson is number 4 for me. Because when you got to remove, people look at Michael Jackson.
I'm amazed he's made your top 10. Amazed, but brilliant. That's brilliant, that Sheldon.
Yeah. The reason why when you got to count on Michael Jackson, such a huge figure, but you got it when you start removing all the bits and pieces, just go on the singing aspect of it. Because yeah, we can look at the videos and we can look at the record sales and all of that stuff like that. But Michael Jackson as a singer, I'm gonna break it up in like 3 different eras. When he was young, being like 10, 11 years old, he could sing songs that were he could deliver a record for that being 10, being 11 years old, but being able to deliver a record like an adult. He had a feeling to where he had a youthful energy to the songs, but he can actually sing songs and deliver them like an adult. There was a record that those guys did when they were young called Reach Out. And it's about the afterglow of after sexual intercourse. And he's singing this record at like 11 and 12 years old. And then he's got a song he remade called he did with the Jackson 5 called A Man's Temptation. Come on, bro. And he's 11 years old, 12 years old singing these records. So then, of course, when he gets older, his voice starts to change and he has that whole percussive style of singing, very, just very unique style, very fluid, very supple, that kind of way that we would hear Ralph Tresvant, and then of course, when he starts to get with Quincy, still the same situation. He started to change his voice up, and he worked with great people who are good arrangers, good songwriters that really helped him put his voice across. And then even within the technology side, it was just like, that's my least favorite of Michael Jackson, when he starts to get into the technology side, because it robs us of the quality of his voice. But Teddy Riley said that he used to try to get him to sing like records like Good Times and things like that. But Michael wanted to stay in the time. He wanted to stay in the future. But I would say Michael Jackson had he was very unique in the way he sang. He didn't sing like anyone else. And he had like a vocal quality to where old records that people never heard before, whether you're listening to Thriller for the first time, Off the Wall for the first time, or you're listening to the older stuff that he did with his brothers, it's like he'll always be that artist that will be in perpetual discovery. People will discover him. He's in constant discovery. So you could be a 15-year-old and you can just go through his catalog and you could just be amazed the way we were amazed when we hear his voice. And you kind of hear it, the Tony Thompsons and certain type of people, Usher and Neo and people like that. You hear strains of Michael Jackson coming out of there. I'm not talking about the dancing, but in terms of the vocal delivery, you hear the Michael Jackson influence. And think about it, is Michael Jackson is unique, and it's the last thing I'm gonna leave you with this, is that Michael Jackson is influenced by older singers. So imagine being 11 years old, 12 years old, 10 years old, but you're being influenced by adults, people who are like 15, 20, 25 years older than you are, and you're 11 and 12 years old. So that what makes him unique, is him just being able to import all of those influences and just come up with his own situation that was there. But he's the reason why he's my number 4.
He's your number 4.
You know,
Okay.
he never, for me, in terms of the songs he chose for his albums, he never seemed to get it wrong. For me, he ever got it wrong once, and I think he made a huge mistake on the Dangerous album. There was one song that was recorded by Blackstreet that we know was recorded by Michael Jackson for the Dangerous album. For me, that he should have recorded Joy, because that would have, what is Human Nature to Thriller, or The Lady of My Life to Thriller, that would have been, Joy would have been that to Dangerous.
And if you look at, and that's
he should have recorded that. That should have been on the Dangerous album, Joy. His version would have been probably one of the greatest records of all time if it have. I'm saying big things there.
If you look at like Butterflies, right? How people love Butterflies. Rock My World, Rodney Jerkins, that was a great record. I love that. But when he did Butterflies, if Michael Jackson would have went back to that same simple Lady of My Life, Liberian Girl, Human Nature style, I think that would have been a good, he was trying to top what he was doing. But if he would have went back to that traditional way of singing, man, it would have been great, because everybody is imitating him.
I've got one more thing to say on Michael Jackson, but I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait for a bit later on. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. So Marsha Bruce from Floaty did write Butterflies, and if you listen to it, she had an interview where she said, Mike saying, am I singing it right? And she was like, yo, Mike, of course you're singing it right. But definitely. Tammy, in her 10-hour interview, does talk about how she created Joy with Michael and the whole process. So if you haven't fallen asleep while watching that, my number 4 is the king of R&B, Mr. Bobby Brown. When I think of, I've always said that one of my favorite albums is the Bobby album.
Really? What, your favorite album's the Bobby album?
Yeah, but it's neck and
I
neck
didn't know.
with
Did you know that,
Make
Sheldon?
Last
Did
Forever.
you know that your favorite album was the Bobby album?
but when I think of it's funny because we talk about our favorite vocal singers, and Bobby's not the best, but as I said, I've been going through the NE catalog, and even when he's on Home Again album, he just has his unique flow in how he delivers a track. Um, Don't Be Cruel, how he just took things around. He just has so much excitement and energy. Yeah, vocally, as I said, Bobby is just was just on a different level. And I've said many of you might not have listened to his Forever album, but if you just get it, he had Tim and Bob, and he had DOA Allen doing the production. He did it his Bobby way. That whole, we think about Usher and Chris Brown and all these Mario and everything, but it was Bobby first. I mean, you had Michael, you had um you had Hammer, and you had Bobby, and they were just, that he was that big. And I think, but he delivered vocally different. He had a different energy, raspy. He knew his limitations, but he just made it work. So yeah, Bobby. Remember when he did "She Ain't Worth It"? He took that song to number one. He just sang did a little rap on it.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you.
Um,
Yeah, Bobby is the man, man. The Bobby, the songs he on New Edition's Home Again song album, the songs that he sang, those are my favorite ones when he sings lead. Like You Don't Have to
yeah.
Worry and some of those other records.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
yeah. First come first.
On,
Yeah,
on
yeah,
a
yeah.
scale
The
of
Bobby.
1 to 10, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate his vocal? Be real. How would you rate his vocal? Scale of 1 to 10.
10 being great and one being bad.
Yeah. Oh no!
I,
What?
I,
Yeah, that way.
yeah, 1 to 10. I would vocally, I would give him a 4.
Wow.
But it's
What
just how he
number has he made your
delivers.
top 10?
Yeah, but I think you think about it, because they're great singers out there, but
But
do they have the
Bobby,
personality and charisma when they
Bobby,
sing?
he's
What would you
again.
rate
You
him,
look at
Sheldon?
singers.
Sheldon, out of 10, what
When,
would you? He gives him 4. What would you give him? What would you give him?
yeah, I would give him a 4
Give him a 4.
because Bobby. When
4
you look
out
at
of 10.
singers, I would give him a.
Yeah,
Reason why I say I would give him a 4 is because Bobby is more of a song stylist, and when you look at a lot of records that he's doing, he's rapping on the records and all of that. But I'll just say this: I'll give him if I can, the highest I give him a high 5. But the thing is, Bobby has a very charismatic voice, very charismatic way of putting songs across that works. Think about it as if you're putting out records like Don't Be Cruel. Obviously, the visual aspect is a major element, like the Michael Jackson situation. But even if you go back and you listen to records like Girlfriend, and he has a certain unique voice, even though, and again, you got to look at the New Jack era is the era where you start seeing people coming in who are not necessarily great singers. Like, guys got good power, but when you see them on stage, it's like sometimes they can't recapture what's done on the records. The New Jack Swing era, I love it, but that's also the era where you start getting a lot of people who are not necessarily technically
until the end.
technical singers. They're not singing in church and all of this other. Some of them are, but they're singing off key and all of this, that, and the other. But they have a unique way of putting a song across. Like, there's some people, New Jack not a lot of New Jack Swing singers, man. They're singing flat. They're singing out of key, but it's something unique about the way these people are putting these records across. But you can't really blame them, because the New Jack Swing singers are coming in the era where you're making records, you're signing contracts. You literally almost off the street. Where you're off the street, you're signing contracts, and then boom, you hit the stage. Where the other generations of singers, they are singing in church and they're singing on street corners and they're getting their live situation together. So Bobby is in that era of that. But I see why he's in your top 5.
Yeah, if you think about songs like Terroni,
Rock with
I'm
you.
sure. Yeah, rock. I'm sure you could get people who were singing better, but
I thought it'd have
they
been further
wouldn't.
up for you, to be quite honest. But I'm glad he's made it. I thought it'd have been a bit further.
No, but yeah, Bobby. Yeah. So as I said, it was. Yeah. So as I said, yeah. I think. Yeah. Vote. I mean, favorite singer. catalog wise, Bobby's up there. What about
What
yourself,
number? What
Stevie?
number we on?
Four.
We're on number
What I'll
four.
quickly say about Bobby Brown is like that period. It felt like when Thriller dropped, and then when Don't Be Cruel dropped, it's like everybody was talking about Bobby Brown. He had the
Yeah,
whole world at his feet, and
yeah,
I feel like you know this younger like Y2K generation, they know who Usher is, they know who Chris Brown is, but they don't know who Bobby Brown is. And the reason they don't know who Bobby
no,
Brown is because he dropped the bag after Don't Be Cruel, and it's hard to forgive him for that because as a teenager, he was my all-time. He probably was near my all-time favorite singer. You know,
But you
he
gotta
got
give
me
him, but you gotta give Bobby this though.
and he dropped,
You gotta give Bobby this though.
and then he dropped the
But you gotta
ball. You
understand.
know,
But here's the deal with Bobby. You say he dropped the ball, right? Okay, so Don't Be Cruel comes out in 88. Bobby's on tour 89, 88. Well, he's Don't Be Cruel rolled really from 88 to 89 to early 90 because Bobby's still doing tours in
yeah. He was
1990.
in Japan. Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
that's a version of a Michael Jackson album. That album is about a good 2.5 year run.
massive, it's
So
huge.
massive. So if he would have came out in 91, but think about it, is that we don't know what kind of record he would have put out in 91. Because think about everybody who he would have worked with. Would he have been able to get locked in the Babyface and Teddy Riley? Because Teddy was in his transitional situation. LA and Babyface was starting to do the face situation, TLC, you know what I'm saying? So we don't know what would have happened in 91. But when 92 came along,
If he
that was a good
had gone
album.
on a great run of albums, right after Don't Be Cruel, which he should have done, if he kept, if he stayed away from the drugs and the women and the alcohol, and gone, and had 2 or 3 great, the kids these would be talking about Bobby Brown like they talk about Usher and Chris Brown now. That
Well,
they don't know who Bobby Brown is.
Well, now when they see the videos, they realize like now when they go back and look at YouTube, thankfully that's there. But if Bobby would have, when he came out with the Forever album, what was supposed to happen was Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis and Teddy Riley, they were supposed to do that record. And Bobby was like, now Bobby's executive producer. Because normally you're the executive producer. Now the budget's going to you. So it was like, now I can just do this myself, which was kind of like a mistake. If he would have, because he had a momentum, like you said, he had a momentum. So even though he was 5 years out, 5 years from the Bobby album, Bobby still had that marquee value. But I just think that he went in that different direction and it didn't work. There's some good spots on that album, but if Bobby would have put out that third album maybe earlier, because remember he was starting to do movies, then Line Between Love and Hate, Panther. But if Bobby would have put out an album around like 94ish, 95ish.
Yeah. Because he did it after the Home Again album.
Yes.
That's when he did the Forever album,
Yeah.
and by that time he was on the press for all the other stuff. But anyway, yeah, we still got the New Edition stuff, so we'll save a lot of that. But
We're at number 4.
Stevie, who's your number 4?
And I guess I would say that 1, 2, 3 of my votes now are very much the teenagers in me back then has voted for him. And again, I go back to the Keith Sweat thing. At the time, I thought this guy was like the greatest singer. When I heard his voice, was the greatest singer of all time. He is New Jack Swing. But after that, the way he's conducted himself years later, he kind of grates on me now. But he's still made number 4. Aaron Hall is at number 4. Aaron Hall's at number 4. We've talked about him. He's just that vocal at the time at Guy's peak between 88 and 90. You can't. It's unmatchable. He's at his peak, but it's it's similar to Bobby Brown. It's
Timmy Gatlin said to Teddy, "We found a new Charlie Wilson." And that's just it. He just said his voice was just on another level. He took the whole Gene Griffin stuff badly when they were recording a Future album. It affected him, and and even when he did the what was the Aaron Hall debut? What was his album?
The Truth.
The Truth. At first I was disappointed because Teddy wasn't on it, but yeah, and then the upbeat tracks to me just didn't. It
I
just
mean,
felt like,
Teddy
man,
said
you
something
can't.
about you listen to the way his vocals were produced on that album to the way they were produced with Guy. There was a big difference
Mm,
because it's like I thought it ain't the same. This I listened to his voice and
yeah,
there's something missing here. As he
yeah.
is it his vocal or is it the way it's being produced? But Teddy did say at the time that he got the best out of him vocally. You know, he did.
Yeah,
Yeah, he knew
he
how to.
did.
He just knew how to tell. Because as I think the Truth album didn't take off until "I Miss You" came out, and then we could appreciate the
The
ballads
ballads,
and and appreciate the ballads.
the ballad saved the
Um,
album because the up tempos, I was like, yeah, something is missing. Even though I love
yeah,
"Don't Be Afraid," and obviously there was like 2 or 3
I love
different
the
versions
remix of
on
that.
there.
I love the remix of "Don't
Yes,
Be Afraid" with Gerald Albright.
yes, and I think the ballads really, when you look at that, "I Miss You," "When You Need Me,"
Or if you listen
to
to
the end of
Faith, like
time.
pick up the phone, he's literally screaming. It's all about screaming rather
Yeah,
than singing.
it was it was. I mean, the worst type of up tempos. I mean, I goodness, yeah, it was the worst type of. I mean, I bought it when it came out because I was a big Guy fan. But as I said, the ballads gave him a lane that he realized. Okay, I need to. Some "I Miss You" gave my child PTS, my child self PTS. It was a tough one. That's when you see visuals and songs because it was a hard one because it's one of those things that it told a story that made the song just take off to another stuff. And then but yeah, Aaron, and Sheldon will give his stuff, but because Aaron is my number three, so I'll just piggyback off of that. He was he was definitely the voice when he gave himself the title The Voice. If you think about Teddy's Jam, and when Teddy produces him and he sings out loud like "Teddy Jam for Me" or all this stuff, he just knew how to blend his voice. My one of my favorite Guy tracks is "Don't Stay, Let's Stay Together," and it was the Teddy remix, and he's almost like he's shouting, but it's contained, and it's just so much power in there. And then he sings the slow songs. Colin says "Smile." He wrote that when he was in when Dave before the Guy album. He just had so much talent that didn't get to shine. Loved Darren Hall. I thought he was, even though I think Diesel sings better or Joseph Stone Street, but I think Aaron was the sound of New Jack at that time. And you can't go away by looking at the Future album and not think of Aaron Hall. So, yeah, he made my number three.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Aaron Hall because again, everybody when he comes out, everybody now is trying to sing that way. So you got to
Mm,
give it to him in terms of that, and then he's bringing in also, he's like the early singer that comes in with a whole different look. Later on, he's got the
yeah,
jewelry and the
shaved his head.
bald and the muscles and the tattoos, and he kind of ushers in that rugged situation. But the ballads,
Mm,
and I agree with you in terms of, it was like when he was doing the later albums. I bought all the other albums that he did. He did 3 albums after the Truth. No, he did 2, and he's singing. And you know how he's singing. He does the runs with the Guide records, but he's still singing straight through. It's just kind of like he's almost a facsimile of himself. It's like he's imitating himself on those later records. It's like how somebody imitating somebody singing. It's like he's imitating it's like he's copying his own blueprint. But along the way, something is actually missing on those later records. But again, those ballads on the Truth. And then there's a couple records on the Inside of You album that he did. He did a duet with Faith Evans. Great record. So, but very influential. Very influential.
mm.
And a friend when he did with the Wyans. Yes, sir. Kurt, great guy. Great singer, man.
Hey, Tammy Lucas wrote that.
Oh,
He's at
really?
number 4, man. Number 4.
Tammy Lucas wrote "A Friend."
You know what? You're right. I got the record and it had T. Lucas. It didn't have her name. It had T. Lucas. Yep.
Yep, she talked about writing it with
So
Bernard
you had him
Bell.
at number
Yes.
9,
In it.
Sheldon. You've got him at number 3. I've got him at number 4.
Sheldon, who's your number three then?
My number 3 is Stevie Wonder.
Wow.
Number
Okay.
number 3 is Stevie Wonder. Reason why I have him as my number three singer, obviously very influential, but he had a panoramic way of singing. It was like, obviously because he's blind, so when he's writing lyrics, everything he's doing is very cerebral, it's very intrinsic, very panoramic. So he gives you like a very vivid, the songs that he makes are very vivid. It's like he kind of, his phrasing, his arrangement, how he sings songs, it's almost like no one else. They can try to sing with the tone, but the way Stevie sings, Stevie's like, the way it's like he puts words together when he's writing these songs. He's coming up with these records, and they're almost like he could do the narration, the conceptual records, then he can turn around and do radio friendly records. He can do ballads. He could sing about every single thing, man. And he's very good, metaphors. He's talking about drugs and he calls it chemical love. And he has I Wish. He's singing I Wish, and you're singing a record about all the jazz greats. Then you sing a song about your baby called Isn't She Lovely? Then you turn around and you can make a song about Dr. King's Holiday. Then you turn around and you can sing a song about a rocket love, just the whole metaphoric situation. He can do so many different styles in one package. So that's why he's my number three.
Wow.
Yeah, the thing about his consistency from Little Stevie, we talk about Little Bow Wow and Little Wayne. He started as Little Stevie and he grew up into Big Stevie, but he was just, he just um yeah, in the 80s I preferred the 80s version of Stevie than the 70s or so. um but yeah, he was, everyone would always credit him. It was popular in the 90s. Everyone had to do a Stevie Wonder remake. It was Ribbon in the Sky or Lately. It was like, okay, I think after Jodeci did Lately, everyone, okay, where's your Stevie Wonder remake to be on your album? That became the norm in the 80s, in the 90s and stuff. But no one can argue
No.
about Stevie. Yes. It's Our Stevie, who's your number
Um,
three?
we've already mentioned him, but it's again, it's a teenage vote. It's Bobby Brown, number three. I could have put him
Okay.
at number one, to be quite honest. Could have went to number one. Like you say, not the greatest singer by any stretch of the imagination, but what an artist he was, and like you said,
Yeah.
he's he is New Jack Swing. So number three, we don't need to say anymore. We said enough about say
Yeah.
enough about him every week anyway.
Okay. Uh, my number two. I mean, this became hard for the top
Very
two. But my number two, um, because this is one of my top. He sings one of my top five favorite songs. A House Is Not a Home, and it's Luther Vandross. There is something about how he sings that just doesn't seem real. It doesn't seem natural when he sings. Now, of course, people could talk about Sam Cooke and um, you know, Marvin Gaye and all these people, but they weren't around. They were before my time. Luther was when I remember Luther singing, and whether he's singing live on a record, it just feels like he just can transform you to another place. He takes his time. Yeah, I just saw. I mean, as I said, one of my top five favorite songs ever is "A House Is Not a Home," and how he delivers it, how he just does his intonations. You just can't teach somebody how to sing like that. That's the thing. He sings like this is me, and no one else can sing like that. You can't, because we talk about Aaron and Fred and Charlie Wilson and Stevie Wonder and Donny Hathaway. So you can see there's a sort of a lineage. But when Luther sings, I mean, who sings like Luther? You know, I don't even know if Johnny Gill, Johnny's power has a power voice, but he doesn't deliver it like Luther.
Yeah, and you skip me, so Luther is my number two as well. But going back real
Okay.
quick to Stevie Wonder, like you said, everybody was copying, doing the Stevie Wonder remake. If you go back to the R. Kelly record made into the '90s, he has a record on there called "Hey Love." That's a Stevie Wonder remake. So go back and listen to that.
Okay.
But when you look at number 2 for me is Luther Vandross as well. And Luther Vandross is the consummate professional. He's a consummate professional in terms of his approach to being a singer, to being a recording artist. And if there's one word that I can associate with Luther Vandross, and that word is pageantry. When I say pageantry, Luther has a presence to when he delivers the songs. It's almost like if you had a glass of water and you poured in Nat King Cole's enunciation, preciseness, delivery, and then you poured in the romantic vibe of 60s female groups, the romantic aspect of it, and then you throw in Sam Cooke and you just shake it up in the bottle and it's there. And I'm glad you said Sam Cooke because Luther Vandross did a record. He remade a Sam Cooke record. So Luther Vandross was the guy where he studied female singers and he grew up in an era of classic 60s soul, and he took that 60s soul plus his ability. He was a legendary background singer, in the studio. So he knew about song arrangements and the whole thing. And just you take that. And he was big to where he had the ballads and he had the mid-tempo records to where he didn't necessarily sing. They were like they weren't like funky records, but they were like
Mm.
peppy records, energetic records, and people of a certain age group, man, they love those records, man. But you can guarantee every Luther Vandross album, he was going to go ahead and give you one or two remakes, and sometimes he would really top the remakes. But like you said, "House Is Not a Home" is quintessential Luther because his pacing. He's not
Mm.
rushing the song. It's very pageant. It's like very pageantry in his delivery. It's like a concert, and he's giving you from the beginning to the end. He's giving you drama. It's just he's the consummate singer. He's not one of those guys that's coming out of the church with the energetic sound. He's not looking like he's almost like the reincarnation of Donny Hathaway. He doesn't have the matinee idol looks, but he could transport you also in telling a story of romance. And unlike a lot of R&B songs, slow records, where I'm the man and I'm the conqueror, I'm chasing the woman. If you go back and listen to Luther Vandross's records, his ballads, it's almost like he's in this whole enduring soap opera where he's the guy constantly getting his heart broken and he's looking for love. And just when love is right there in his grasp, it gets away from him. Very
Wow.
vivid, very vivid. Luther Vandross, great.
I
That's my
mean,
number
his
two.
run, I think his run in the 80s up to about 1987 was incredible. I felt it kind of that peak and from the 90s, from the Power of Love onwards, kind of dropped off, didn't it? Really,
But
and then
but think about this, Stevie. Think about this, Stevie. Every record that he made between 1981 and 1991, it either went platinum, gold, triple platinum. And his albums, like he was the first person to have two albums that were like platinum in the same year. I mean, his records were overlapping in sales that were coming out, but his peak, you're right, 81 to like 88. Then he started to kind of like his records started to sound the same. But that 81 to 91 era, well, really 81 to
great,
90,
great.
95, everything was gold, platinum, or triple platinum, or double platinum.
Mm.
He had a good run, man.
I mean,
Yeah.
I hate to bring this up, but it was talked about a lot at the time. It was the question of is he or isn't he? Do you remember that at the time? Is he or isn't he? It was a big thing in the black community that because
Yeah.
would he still be accepted if he came out? He never quite come out, did he?
No, he never came
He
out.
never quite come
And
out.
they was because at that point that was a death sentence because at that point he had a lot of female followers.
Yeah.
And for him he was a private. Back then that stuff was really private, but for him it was a situation where for him the music, in my personal life is my personal life. The music, that's the great thing about him is that he gave you an aura of mystery, but when you hear the songs were always at the topic of the conversation. They were always first and foremost.
But
But you're
we
right.
could tell it really
Exactly.
affected him though, because obviously
His weight.
he kind of balloons up in weight, doesn't he? He loses weight, then he puts a lot of
Yeah.
weight. It must have burned in him for years, that.
But then that's the thing about being an honest singer, because when he sang, it felt real. As you as Sheldon tried to excellently explain about the way he delivered a song, you could feel as if he wasn't just going up and sing. He was almost telling his own story as much as he wanted you to hear, and that's why it's yeah. And then
But
he
he studied the.
then
Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I was just saying that Clive Davis gave him, when he signed to J Records, and he did that telling me this. I can't remember the name of the song now. When he did his comeback album,
Yeah. Take you out
and
tonight. Yeah.
yeah, so so anyway,
And with him, you're talking about people producing. This guy was like, when he showed up to sign his first record contract, when he put out his first album, Never Too Much, he had already spent his own money to record the album. He showed up at the label with a completed demo, completed songs from beginning to end. And basically he said, I'm writing and producing all of my records. And he said that even though he was having the hits, CBS would not cross him over. He said CBS did not, he said it, CBS did not like his music. So he used to go back and forth with them because they wanted him to record other type of music. But he stuck to his guns and he gave you that consistent sound. But behind the scenes, it was really rough for him career-wise because he never got to push, even though it was like the label was content with him being just a regular black artist. They didn't want, and as far as being pop, they didn't want to push him. So, but Luther Vandross, consummate professional, technical genius, great songs.
Stevie, who makes your number two?
Oh gosh, number two. Memories of this. I remember the album had been out a few weeks. I'd heard the album on radio. I'd heard lots of tracks being played on the soul shows at the time. There was an epic interview there's a station in Manchester at the time, Sunset Radio, and there was a soul show on a Sunday afternoon by a guy called Richard Serling, who played all the new modern soul, independent soul records, and he just happened to interview this guy. He didn't just interview him; he had him in the studio, and he played one track after the other. He played literally the whole album, and I never forgot that interview. The only thing I will say, they didn't make a good recording of that interview because it needs to be heard. But the album had been out a few weeks. I'd not bought it because it was in every record shop, and I remember getting on a train, spending the train money, go to Manchester, just to buy a new seeing what had come out on import that morning. And I'd got in the shop, and Special Generation's first album had come out, and they play, "Oh, we got this album for you, Steve, Special Generation," and they were playing through it, and I'm like, "No, I didn't buy it. I went, no thanks," and they couldn't believe I didn't buy it, and I'm like, I was so down that day because what am I going to buy? What am I going to spend my money on? And I thought, well, there it is. I've not bought this album yet, even though I could have got it in my local little town. I thought I thought I'll settle for this album. Really down, got home, played the album. I thought, oh my gosh, man, it just picked me up so much that I just didn't stop playing the album for months after it. But number two, Teenage Selection, great voice, no drama with this guy, kept on making solid albums. Rub You the Right Way, My, Fair Weather Friend. It's got to be Johnny Gill. New Jack Era. Johnny Gill for me has gone in at number two, believe it or not.
Wow.
Johnny Gill, great voice.
I wouldn't have thought that.
Have you played his Motown album recently? You need to play that album because it's a great album. It's a great little album. You can play that.
Yeah,
My. It's just a brilliant album.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I think
had some great New Jack on it, great ballads.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have it's gonna be a tough one when we do the new edition ballad catalog because it's hard to pick the albums, but wow, Johnny Gill.
Beats Bob Brown, beats Aaron Hall, beats Big Bub. I just because if
Wow.
he stayed, he's still making records now. Like you say, there's been no drama with him. He just kept making records, stayed in the game. He's been a consistent artist and deserves his props. Old Johnny Gill. He doesn't get them. He don't really get them, does he?
Yeah, no, no, as I said, yeah.
Johnny,
I always go ahead, Sheldon.
no, Johnny's the man. You talking about 40 years. You talking about he put his first record out in 83 and he's still putting out music 40 years later. And him having the
Yeah.
voice. And when you look in terms of, if you're saying, like, if we look at Keith Sweat's record, that, that is making Johnny Gill album is on par with that. He's giving you so many different records, and there's not a dud on that Johnny Gill album. That album is perfect from beginning. Johnny Gill, yes, perfect.
Mm.
Someone name me.
Yeah, as I
Somebody
said,
name me a better 12-inch remix than the hype mix of Johnny Gill would be the right way, because it's just in terms of New Jack Swing, that mix is just that is up there.
yeah,
It's up
as
there
I
with Guy,
said,
Guy records for me.
yeah, it's yeah, as I said, I'm it's going to be a hard one trying to pick out that New Edition catalog because I'm thinking about his album and the Poison album and the Ralph album, and I don't know how we're going to do that one. So if you thought today was hard, I think that's going to be hard. But yeah, Johnny, that's a good one. Before we get to our number one, the people that I had to miss out, um, Stokely from Mint Condition, very unique voice. I couldn't fit him in my top.
Understandable. I same with me. It's
Yeah,
understandable.
he just the way he's almost. I don't even know how to describe the way he sings. He almost sings like he sings as if he's begging, but in a very subtle way, not like Keith. I love Stokely. I love Slim from 112. He was very different, very unique. Um, the tracks that they had, and as I said, that debut album is one of my favorite. Joe Stone Street didn't get enough from him, and Wanye Morris from Boys to Men.
Great
There's
voice.
the way he always takes it home, the way he brings his passion. Daryl Simmons talks about when they recorded End of the Road. He had laryngitis, but they had to, and they didn't have auto tunes back then. So they had to sort of squeeze him out to get the vocals on that. And and I think I don't think we've not mentioned Joe. He was in. Unfortunately for him, he was on. It felt as if he was under R. Kelly's shadows. So he felt like he was the. I won't say the poor man's R. Kelly because he wrote and sang. It just felt as if R. Kelly was there and everyone else was second. But he vocally was different, unique, and he could write and he wrote for others, and he had his different style. So these are guys that, and then Eldebard, which you've said, these are guys that I had to mention, and Kenny Green that I couldn't put on my top 10, but I had to list them out. Sheldon, anyone that you thought about in your top 10 before you get to number one?
Yeah, briefly, and for a variety of reasons, for the lack of time, I just said these people are very unique in their vocal style and the type of songs they made. So it's going to be Maxwell, D'Angelo, Al Green, Joe, Kenny Green, R. Kelly, Big Bob, Gerald Levert, Freddie Jackson, Glenn Jones, Prince, Ralph Tresvant, Ron Osley, my man JT Taylor from Kool and the Gang, and Johnny Wilder from the UK group Heat Wave with the stacked vocals, that Rod Temperton wrote the lyrics for him. So those are my honorable mentions of the great singers that obviously they didn't fit in my top 10, but I had to acknowledge them, and some of the ones that you all named as well. I won't belabor that, but yeah, it was hard, but a lot of great singers, man. But my number one.
What about you, Stevie?
I'm sorry. Go
Oh
ahead.
no!
Go
Before you
ahead.
get to number one, Stevie. Yes,
I'll
Stevie. Who are your?
I'll go from 20 to 10. 20 Donnell Jones, 19 R. Kelly, 18 Dave Hollister, 17 Mickey Blue, 16 Tevin Campbell, 15 Keith Sweat, 14 Gerald Levert, 13 Albie Shaw, 12 Charlie Wilson, 11, Tony Thompson. If we're talking about all-time faves of any generation, I had Curtis Mayfield, Bobby Womack, Michael McDonald, Frankie Beverly, Luther, and Stevie Wonder. So that's how hard it was. I mean, you look at that 10 there from 20 to 11. Any of them could have been in 10 to 1. Any of them
Yeah.
could have been in. So difficult. But anyway, let's get to number 1. Sheldon.
Yes, Sheldon, who's your number one?
Okay, I'm gonna paint the picture for you. So imagine being you got Aaron Hall, you got KC, you got Christopher Williams, you got let's just say Wanye, let's say you got Big Bub, right? But you got a singer as good as these people are. You got a singer that comes out and shoots to the top above all of them. I won't say better, that shoots to the top above all of them. And this is my number one. This is my singer, and he fits into that category. Namdi, you talked about Luther Vandross. That is like the blueprint for where a lot of people of a certain age, you're going to remember Luther. You don't necessarily remember anyone before because it comes slightly before everyone else. But for me, my number one person is Teddy Pendergrass.
Wow.
Teddy Pendergrass is the guy when he comes out, right? At the time, people like Isaac Hayes and Al Green and other singers are extremely popular. People Bryson, people like that. And he comes and he bypasses them all. And Barry White, he bypasses all and becomes the preeminent singer. Starts out as a drummer. This guy could sing ballads. He could sing up-tempo dance records. He could sing message records, songs with like social commentary. Then he comes out when you're talking about being a singer on stage, captivating the women and all of these different things. And then by him leaving a group, going solo, he plants the seeds that when he leaves the group and goes solo, everybody else does the same thing behind him. Jeffrey Osborne, Lionel Richie. There's a lot of singers that go out and they go leave their groups because back then when he left a group, it was career suicide for a singer to leave a group because groups were that popular. So when he came out solo, boom, everybody else, it planted the seeds for them to go solo. And he had a good reign to where after he had his accident, you saw everybody come shoot to the top. Lionel Richie, boom, this one, that one, this one, that one. And it was all on the strength of what Teddy was doing. But for me, I love the fact that he could do up-tempo records, dance records, social commentary, sexy ballads, and you can just kind of get lost into his voice. And he had that charisma. When you start looking at what he was doing, like Easy, Got to Take It Easy, my man Chin Beats. That's the forerunner. When he comes out with that record, once he comes out with that record, Gamble and Huff, the people who wrote songs for him, Turn Off the Lights, Come Go With Me. Those records are in the vein of Easy, Take It Easy. So once they hit that formula, it's just unfortunate that the car accident slowed his momentum. But when you hear the passion in the Christopher Williams, that's the Teddy Pendergrass channel. When you hear the soul in KC, that's the soulfulness, and it was unique to where nobody could duplicate that. To where that was the end of the guys with the rough voice. Enter people like Lionel Richie, into Luther Vandross, guys that have the softer tones or whatever. But that masculinity with the beard and the whole energy, yeah, man, he's my number one. Yeah.
If we're talking about the 90s, let's back this up here. We talk about the 90s. Teddy P had a record. It was a remix in the 90s that still, 90s R&B collectors, or I Believe in Love, the remix. Tell you what, that is a serious 90s R&B record. But let's go back to Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, Wake Up Everybody. Possibly one of the greatest.
Wake Up Everybody.
One of the greatest soul records of all time. That, you know what I mean? So
this guy wrote,
unbelievable.
He wrote records like, yes, yeah. And think about it is that he's singing these records. He's 21, he's 22, 23, 24 years old. He's a young man, and he sounds like somebody older. He's got records where, like Bad Luck, where he's just in the monologue he could give you records like go to a record like Be For Real. He has the whole 3 or 4 minute monologue.
Got the 70s on lock, and then towards the late 80s, he gives us an 80s groove, a club 80s groove, Joy. The remix.
Yeah, Joy. He comes back. He comes back with the
And
Joy
in
and the
the
Calloway
90s,
brothers.
he hits us with Believe in Love. I mean, what?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Just brilliant.
Teddy, brilliant. Yeah.
And like you say, after bass, and he's singing like you say, he'd been on that accent. He's got half his vocal then, and he's still killing it with half a vocal. So,
yeah, I saw his documentary recently. Yeah,
on Full Throttle can't even get anywhere near even half of Teddy P's. Half of Teddy P's. But I've said some controversial things tonight.
And he can do it. Think about it.
You talk about real great classic black music greats here that are unsurpassable for me.
And he could do it. And a shout out somebody was throwing, I'm done after this, to Freddie Jackson. Yeah, Freddie Jackson was super dope because Freddie Jackson came in that same Luther Vandross vibe. And there's a moment in time where Freddie Jackson owned radio. Freddie Jackson had like 7 #1 records in a row. At a period of time where Luther was peaking, in a 5-year span, Freddie Jackson had like 7 #1 records in a row, man. Big.
yeah. Sheldon, do you want to go do from 10 to 1? Because those who are joining now might not remember because we've mentioned Alexander O'Neal, but so 10 to 1.
Okay, my 10 to 1. 10 is Alexander O'Neal. 9, Aaron Hall / Charlie Wilson. 8, Keith Sweat. 7, Albie Shore / Marvin Gaye. 6 is El DeBarge. I had Johnny Gill, but I switched him out for El DeBarge. 5, Donny Hathaway. 4, Michael Jackson. 3, Stevie Wonder. 2, Luther Vandross. 1, Teddy Pendergrass. And Johnny Gill is in my honorable mention.
It's a solid
as well,
10,
too.
that. It's a solid 10.
Yeah.
What was your... We get your number 1 now, Namdi.
Yeah, so my number 10 is Alexander O'Neal. Number 9 was Nat King Cole, Unforgettable. Number 8 was Casey Haley. Number 7 was Big Bub. Number 6 was Christopher Williams. Number 5 was Dizzo. Number 4, Bobby Brown. Number 3, Aaron Hall. Number 2, Luther Vandross. And my number 1 favorite artist of all time, favorite male singer. When I think of my favorite song ever, is "Lady in My Life." That's my ultimate song, And when I interview people and I say, "What's your favorite song?" It's based on the fact that I know my favorite song. The emotion that this guy, forget about the concerts, forget about selling over 1 billion records. Sheldon talked about what he did when he was part of the Jackson 5, what he did when he did his, the Ben album, and or when he did Off the Wall, or when he went back to the Jacksons. He did, Heartbreak Hotel. He never lost the emotion to connect. It's just that he probably, I don't say got lazy. I think he was chasing the sound later on. But he every now and then he'll bring it out. Every album he'll do something. Invincible was probably a great album, just that it had too many songs on them. But Butterfly, Heaven Can Wait. I don't know how many people have listened to Heaven Can Wait. The guy says, "Tell the angels no, that I would rather wait to go into heaven if I can go with my baby tonight." He started to get back into those ballads and love songs and connecting emotionally. He's my all-time favorite artist. But as a singer, Michael, as I said, forget about the records and the concerts and stuff, because that's on another level. But if you go back to his albums and older stuff, and just listen to him, the story about Heaven Can Wait, and Phonetic, the producer, Kevon Edmonds sang that track, and he said to Fanatic, "Why are you trying to get me to sing like Michael? You should give him the record instead." And that's how he got to Michael. But Michael, vocally, he was just unmatched. So vocals, we've said enough about. I think we've all touched out. I don't think Stevie mentioned Michael, but yeah, he's my all-time favorite.
Great choice.
What about yourself? Yeah, Break of Dawn. Yeah, there's too many tracks. I said, yeah, yeah. I've always like my biggest regret. I had tickets to see him in the This Is It concert at the O2, and sadly he passed away 2 weeks before the concert. That was going to be my first time seeing him live, because when I was in the States in the '90s, he didn't tour in the States. He was touring in Europe, and when I was back in Europe, he wasn't touring in Europe. He was touring back in the States. So he's definitely the greatest ever, and he acknowledges that he learns from the people before him, whether it's Fred Astaire, whether it's James Brown, whether it's Sam Cooke. He doesn't hide the fact that he was learning from these guys and taking it to another level.
And it's
Yeah.
funny that you brought that up on the touring side because the records were so big. He didn't tour a lot, man. You got to realize that he didn't go on tour. He didn't tour for Thriller. He didn't tour for. It was like by the time he started touring, he toured around like the bad era, like
Yeah,
87, 88 or whatever that was. But he hadn't, and then that was it. And then he didn't tour. You talking about from 88. He probably toured from 88, 89 or whatever that window was. And he didn't tour again in the States ever. He didn't tour in the States ever after Bad, man. You talking about
yeah, he didn't. Yeah, he didn't do for Dangerous. I was in
he,
the States that he didn't tour for Dangerous,
he didn't tour for
and he
like
didn't
20
tour
something
for
years
his.
in the States. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, Stevie, you've gone through your 20 to number two. Who makes you number one?
Well, at the time this artist was around, I was dancing on the ceiling. And then again, at a time this artist, my very favorite artist of all time, I remember this video. I don't know whether this woman was playing with some clay. I can't remember it, but it was the biggest. It was the biggest shock of all time. The end of the video, because you didn't realize she was blind till the end of the video, and it suddenly dawned on him. And at the time, this artist that I'm talking about, he'd left Motown. But I'm not talking about Lionel Richie. I'm talking about the guy who left Motown and then went to Epic Records. And I'm going to get serious. I've gone a bit of fun there with old Lionel, because Lionel ain't me number one. Let's get serious here now. I'm going to get serious here now, guys. It's like
Okay, he's not Lionel. Okay.
The hardest thing we got to deal with in life is when one of your family members passes away. It's the hardest thing you got to deal with in life, when one of your close family members goes. And in terms of music artists that pass away, and when they actually pass away, I remember the day he passed away, and it felt like that day to me, and it still does. It felt like music died that day, because he had such an effect on me as an artist growing up. I remember my grandma bought me my first Walkman when I was about 7 or 8, and I got a Sony Walkman, and I got the cassette of like the biggest selling album of all time on cassette. So it was set in stone for me then. That was my first real album that I'd listened to over and over on a cassette. And the day he died is just, it ripped my heart out. I mean, there's only really two artists that have been profoundly affected by dying, and Aaliyah was one of them. It's still hard to get over that one, Aaliyah passing away. But it's possibly the only time we'll agree on a podcast. It's possibly the only time on a podcast where our number ones will be the same, Namdi. Michael Jackson, you know what I mean? It's just like, I know Stevie Wonder's got probably greatest catalogue of songs of all time, and he's gifted from God, but so is Michael Jackson. And there's no artist that comes close to him. Not even Prince, and that's a big debate. And Prince is a phenomenal artist, but there's just something I don't know. There's just something about Michael Jackson, and I can't get past that. He's my number one. So there you have it. I like to say, the biggest mistake he made was not putting Joy on Dangerous. That's the only mistake he made for me in his career.
Yeah. Michael Jackson is unique, man, because when he died, in
Terrible day.
2009.
Terrible day.
I mean, he had been making records. I think what year? What year was Invincible?
Yeah,
2001.
Or 2001. So he's one of the
Yeah.
few artists that that made music throughout my entire lifetime. I'm talking about his first record came out. I was a year old, man, and this guy's making records almost my entire lifetime. And
Mm.
just like you said, is he's very no one. You talking about as an entertainer. He redefined what an entertainer was. Even if you take away the record sales, just from an entertainer side, is that he just reshaped what it meant to be an entertainer. And like you said, the records, man, it's just that it's always another record that he made throughout his entire life that you can discover that you never heard before. You can rediscover.
Mm.
And I hate to separate him from his brothers because sometimes we kind of like separate one person from the group in a lot of situations, and the group is monumental. But when you look at who he was, people are always going to be inspired by him. He's been dead now for like almost 15 years, man. And people are they're always going to be inspired by Michael Jackson. All future ages.
Yeah, I remember when off was that Moonwalker came out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, as I said, it's yeah. I mean, as I said, as Stevie was doing his recollection there, all of a sudden I got I got a little emotional because, as I said, just thinking about the fact that he just wanted to, he loved to sing, loved to entertain, but the bigger he got, and especially when he started owning publishing, he had a target on his back. When he started, when he owned the Beatles catalog and stuff, he just had a target on his back. But there's no artist out there who
I mean,
can't deny that.
let's look at we're all lucky enough to have gone through the Thriller era, and we realise how big. I mean, the generation that's grew up on, say, Drake, right? And you look at all these streaming numbers of how many millions Drake's done, or some of these artists now. I'm sorry, right? You take Spotify away, take the internet away now, right? Would 42 million people go out to a record store and buy a Drake album? I'm not so sure. They did with Michael Jackson though.
No.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
and that's
And
that's in the 80s alone.
and Steve, you have a good point because when you look at streaming numbers, I mean, we have to kind of like we can't minimize the streaming era because that's the era that we're in. But when you talk about physical product, you remove streaming away. There's 40 million people that went out. Over 45 million people went out and bought Thriller. Almost 35 million went out and bought Bad. Almost 40 million went out and bought Dangerous. Over 10, 12 million went out and bought Off the Wall. Then you got to realize even before that, he had already sold like 20 million records with his brothers. Come on, man. It's just that when you look in terms of that, there is nobody. And think about, I'm gonna put this in perspective. Lenny Kravitz and Babyface, they had a similar story. Lenny Kravitz talks about being in Madison Square Garden in New York City in 1972 when he's got to be about 6 or 7 years old. No, he's 8 years old. And he recalls going to see the Jackson 5, and that was the inspirational spark for him in 1972 to want to do music. And in that same year, Babyface is in Indianapolis in Market Square Arena, and he's seeing the Jackson 5 do their thing. And that's the inspirational spark for him to do music. And then fast forward, when you look at the Neos and the Chris Browns and the Tony Thompsons, and the list goes on, that influence, even if people are not Usher, even if people are not consciously Pharrell, you got Pharrell songs where he's singing like Michael Jackson. It's just that he is in that rare space where he links the past, he could be the present, and he links the future, man. You don't have too many artists who can do that, man, who've done it.
Yeah, and as I said,
Going
and we're
back,
focused on the singing, just the vocals.
going back to Thriller though, even the videos, forget about the videos. It just revolutionized everything. you know.
Yeah.
And you got to
Yeah.
realize that he's at the time he has the thing, and he's also like, and please, people don't kill me when I say this, but when you look in terms of when you see how big a Beyonce is, if you were born in 1980 and afterwards, when you see how big Beyonce is, how Beyonce is able to take top producers. You got the big record label Sony to give you the platform. You have all of this going on to put you here. That's what Michael Jackson did in the 80s. You had Sony, CBS, Epic, who he was affiliated. That was the biggest record label in the world. Then you had Quincy Jones, a producer with the greatest reach of musicians and writers and arrangers and talented people. Then you put that together with Michael Jackson and his own unique talent. And of course, like I said, CBS had the money to put the money into the videos, man. And then of course, Michael Jackson being able to have that, he was goal oriented. He saw himself. He was the first artist to see himself big. He was the first artist really to realize his potential. Other people realized his potential, but he was one to really see his potential, meet his potential, but also exceed his potential. He's the one that really got the most out of his career. You know, there's no what ifs with Michael Jackson. There's a few, like you said, with the joy, but there aren't too many what if, unlike Aaliyah. Aaliyah was on the cusp
Exactly.
of what she could have been.
That's why it hurts.
Michael
That
Jackson,
one hurts because of that reason why.
Michael Jackson fulfilled and exceeded his destiny.
So
Yeah.
there's a documentary coming out, I think next week. George
December 4th.
December 4th. So
Well, December 4th is Thriller 40. Thriller 40.
Yeah.
That's December 4th.
So it's going to be Mike. It's the music industry before and after Thriller, because the industry changed. That's the whole talk about that. So it's as I said, he's the greatest artist and he's influenced everyone. So,
well, like I said, there's a Twitter generation now that argue that Drake, Chris Brown is like they don't understand. They didn't go through the Thriller era. They've not.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna tell you, Stevie.
Before they don't know
Stevie, that's the equivalent of people seeing. That's the people equivalent growing up with LeBron James, and you never saw Michael Jordan or you never saw Dr. J. It's the same situation. When you look at Drake, you know, I give him credit for being consistent, but the whole streaming is kind of like it's very inflated. It's very inflated, and it gives a perception that these people are bigger than what they are. But in this decade of the streaming era, from 2000, let's say roughly 2009 until now, he's the most dominant artist in that particular space. But there's such a thing as quality over quantity. There's somebody, you said, Stevie, they didn't put out a lot of music. I think that was you earlier in our conversation. But the music they did put out, it exceeded. Like when you look at Johnny Gill's album, the Johnny Gill album, or the Keep Sweat, Make It Last Forever. You know what I'm saying? And you can pick a Michael Jackson album, you can pick a Jodeci album, Forever My Lady. You can put out 15 streets, but the question would be, does any one of those 50, even you can do 50 Cent's album, get Richard Dye Toronto, the list goes on. But if you're Drake or somebody's putting out records in that time, do you have an album that stands up to all of those records? Does any of these artists have a record that stand up to Johnny Gill's album or the Keep Sweat album or Michael Jackson album? No.
Yeah. Anyway, so I mean, guys, we want to, that was our top 10. I mean, next week is our top 10 favorite female artists. Go, if you can see how we battled for this one, it'll be interesting next week. Top 10 favorite female artists. There's going to be lots of women that we're going to miss out, but that's going to be a tough one. But I think the one that we mentioned, then after that, we're doing the New Edition catalog. So it's whether it's the New Edition group or the Bobby or the Johnny or the BB Edition catalog. That's going to be
get your mince pies ready for the Christmas special, where you can come on.
And then the Christmas special, we're going to invite you guys live we're going to share the link so you can come on the podcast with us. And then as you're commenting, we'll just send the link so you can come on. We'll have a little chat, and the next one comes out. So you guys, we want to thank you guys, as always, for making this thing possible, because the comments and stuff, because there are lots of people that we forgot about. But it'll be interesting about the females, because I've been writing it, cutting it down. Yeah, I wonder who's gonna have Beyonce. So yeah, any final words, Stevie? Then
Yeah, in terms of Michael Jackson, I was there at Wembley Stadium, Dangerous Tour, when he got on the rocket, just propelled jetpack at the end of the gig,
oh,
and he flew out the stadium. He flew out, and everybody run out the stadium trying to find him. Check that one out. Run out of the stadium looking for him. The man had gone, he'd not gone in rocket, he'd gone underground, he'd gone back, he was on a bus out, he was gone back to Neverland or wherever he was going to.
It's funny, Stevie, because I saw something like that. He was in Poland somewhere, and he kind of like flew out of the arena. And I'm tell you, it's crazy when you see the whole arena in tears. They're just emotional, falling out, just man. But like I said, I appreciate everybody, riding out with us for all the 2023. You tuning back in with us next week or the week after on the Christmas.
Yeah, next week.
And then your comments, on the Christmas special, let us know maybe some of your favorite moments or your favorite episodes or whatever. But we really appreciate you taking this ride with us, because there's so many platforms you really could listen to. But we really appreciated that for making these Sundays very special. So thank you.
Yeah, and just finally, yes. I
You
moved
wanna
to
go away a week?
America.
Next week we go live again next week.
Yeah, but I moved to America in '92, and the Super Bowl of '93 was my first time watching it. And Michael did the halftime show, and he pops out and stands there for an hour, for about 10, like for about a minute, and on, and he just stood there, and everyone's cheering, and after him, everyone had to be on that or do the Super Bowl and stuff. So he is the greatest ever. But anyway, guys, we want to thank you guys for being part of the show. As always, next week's going to be another live one. Then, as I said, we've got two more, the new edition stuff, and then, as I said, the final one would be, we're going to send a link for you guys to come on and chat with us. But thanks for supporting us. We definitely appreciate every single one of you guys, and it's it was a little emotional when Stevie went on his when he kind of reminisced on Michael. All of a sudden, it kind of turned things around, so we had to try and cheer it up. But thanks, guys. We really love you and appreciate you, and we'll see you guys same time next week.